Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Soul Talk. Today we have a very special guest, Josh, my fellow WKU guy over in the Outlaw Nation. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
I love that I'm getting all of the Outlaw Nation people to come on and I love talking to you guys all the time. So the fact that now we're doing it on screen, it's just like, yep, we're continuing to do what we do every
I
night.
know might be some repetitive conversations, but now that they know the conversations that we have.
Exactly. So let's get right into it. Let's start with our recent reads. So what have you been reading recently?
So I always like to go back and reread the graphic novels that I did. I don't know why they were so. I know it's not on the list, but Moss 1 and 2. So it was basically they're old books, so there might be like over 20 years old at least. The
Oh,
graphic
wow.
novels, but they basically painted like the Jewish. It was about the Holocaust, and there were mice though. It wasn't like human beings or anything. They painted them as mice. And they sold them at like I got them in when I was in middle school, like as like the reading that you can buy, like they had like the Scholastic book,
Mm-hmm.
stores and stuff back then. And that was like one of the things I saw a graphic novel, and for some reason I didn't realize I was even into comic books, and then but for some reason I saw it just seemed cool to me, so I picked that up, and yeah, they didn't hold anything back. I don't know why they even sold them to even middle school kids at that point, compared to what as people don't want kids to read now. But it was very educational. I mean, they didn't hold anything back. I mean, it was showed like one like scene of like them taking one of the Jewish mice, and like one thing is I'm swinging them against the concrete wall, and the next frame is just like a blood splatter. Like I mean, it was, and they didn't hold anything back, but they also wouldn't let you know this was what was going on. I
Yeah.
don't know, I don't know if it was that like somebody actually picking one person up and just doing that against the wall, but it wasn't. It wouldn't surprise me based off of other things that we've come to discover. And then I always go back and watch The Watchmen because it's one of the best character pieces I've ever seen. It's exploring just superheroes, but what's really the right decision, what's the wrong decision. And like I've talked to some people before, like they're like, "What's your favorite character of the graphic novel?" It's like Rorschach. They're like, "He's such a bad guy." I said, "It's not that I think that he's a good guy. I just said he was my favorite character
Yeah.
because but Rorschach, it's like everybody that's in the graphic novel all thinks they're doing the right thing, and sometimes it depends on who the reader is. That's that for them to determine. So you're basically presented with this character that's got all these backstories and all these things, and you think because they're the quote unquote heroes, but are they really? And is their decision really the right thing, or is it more of so is it more of a personal thing? So you because like the comedian's more narcissistic, and he didn't give a crap, but he liked he just but he liked he basically was the quote unquote narcissist of the thing. But then at the end when he was getting the crap beat out, like the beginning when he's getting the crap beat out of him, he was going through all the guilt that he realized, at his old age, he realized, when he was younger and in his prime of doing it, and like all the things that he was doing, and now he reflected back, and he was just like, as soon as the things were happening to him at the beginning of the comic, he was basically just like letting it happen. He wasn't defending himself or anything because he was just like he'd come to grips with the fact that, oh crap, I was a terrible person. And then and Miss Dr. Manhattan just going through, and it's such a great character piece. And it was very Zack Snyder had a very difficult, like he had a very tall task on his hand, to one make that entertaining, because it's better in graphic novel form than it does resulting in screen, because it's kind of like the prequels of Star Wars. It's a lot of talking. It's not a lot of
Yeah.
action. And I give credit to Zack Snyder. He's not the best storyteller anyway, but his visuals are great. So if you want,
The beginning visual of that
that
movie.
with
Yeah.
I forget the artist. I can't believe I'm forgetting the artist, but
Oh man,
uh,
I'm blanking too.
yeah, the Bob Dylan
Yes,
song.
yes, 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 yes,
Yeah,
yes.
that whole opening is one of the best openings you're ever going to see in
Yeah.
cinema. But after that, it just kind of, the owl and the specter, like, or I think that's her name, um, you know, Night Owl and all that stuff. The story, the way they presented, just kind of fell flat. and you really didn't understand what was going on with Dr. Manhattan and what he was going through. It really gets, the book's better. I get it because they have more time to explore it, and that's why a lot of times you see the Snyder cut because he really wants to. And most of the time you see like, oh, the Snyder cut's better. It's because he he's only cut down, but it's hard for him. He wants so much visual and not
Yeah.
as much, and so it's hard for him to find that gel unless he has 7 hours to really do everything that he wanted to do. Not to
He should just do TV shows. I think
right,
he'd be really good at long form TV shows. But I've never thought about Ghost. Who's my favorite character in Watchmen? And I think it might be Rorschach for me as well, just because he's the most interesting character
mm-hmm.
too. And if you look at like each character in their own right is trying to do the right thing for what they believe.
Right.
And in the sense, he just wants the truth out there.
Mm-hmm.
And even though that it can mess things up, and then you see now in like the Watchmen show on HBO, like the people who follow Rorschach or his like
Philosophy.
teachings and stuff, his philosophy aren't the best,
No.
but you kind of see, oh yeah, no, they're all doing the right thing in their own mind, and
Yeah.
he's probably the most interesting character and the most like if you want to look at like a philosophy of someone and see how they can go astray or go a certain way, I think Rorschach's definitely the person you should focus on.
Yeah. And the thing with Rorschach too, it's when he presents as something is that with the Rorschach, even with how Rorschach test is it's how you view it. It's
Mm-hmm.
not it's in how the person views it now, and so it's how all these people view the world and what they think is the right way to go about it. Now, whether or not that was Alan Moore's plan, I don't know. Knowing how far out there he is, probably. Um,
It could be a happy accident.
could be a happy accident, kind of like the Pepe Sylvia from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, but not get into that. But there's a lot of happy accidents where the audience will be like, "Yeah, this," and the writers are like, "Yeah, that's exactly what we were going for." But but yeah, if you really want to like explore there's obviously the reason they made him Rorschach, and
Mhm.
not just some other mask guy. Is because the Rorschach test is what do you see here, and so it creates more of a person like that's kind of how you view the world, and so all these characters view the world in a different way, but they all want to be quote unquote heroes. So that's why Rorschach is always kind of like the centerpiece of
Mhm.
the thing, is because he'll do whatever it takes. And so some people look at it as like, oh, he's more of more of an anti-hero. Well, as you can tell, Deadpool's my favorite character. I like Harley Quinn. I like anti-heroes. It's because everyone's got a little bit of a dark side, and they're the most fun. They just are. So that's why I like it's hard for me because most of the time we're anti-heroes as human beings. It's
Mhm.
like so that's more related. Like Superman, like no one's he's so cookie cutter and all that, and
That's why, like, I'm not a Superman fan, and like, there's certain comics like Superman Smashes the Klan. I love that comic. That's by Jean Lewin Yang. I've talked about it before on a previous episode of Soul Talk. But I'm not the biggest Superman fan because he is so cookie cutter and so like goody two shoe. Where I want those complex characters. I want
yeah,
the. I joke. I was like, I'm Team Red when it comes to Marvel. That's Spider-Man, Deadpool, and Daredevil. Those are
right.
my three favorite characters when it comes to Marvel. So it's those like you have all the different aspects between the three of them of just flawed human beings.
Right. And that's something that all of us can relate to. That's the reason it's like Superman. It's like it's a great he's a great and especially we'll get into it with the Lois and Superman. It's just something that they grounded Superman in the show, but they didn't present it anyway. We'll get into it, but that's like the first time I texted my friend. That was the first time that I ever actually was like, this is the first thing other than animated of Superman that I really enjoyed. And I don't even think the guy who plays Superman is that great of a Superman. I like Henry Cavill as the best Superman I've seen. I know, I mean, Christopher Reeve is always going to be Superman, but just anyway, but that's he just Henry Cavill just to me just quote unquote looks like Superman. Like if I pictured somebody to look like Superman, it'd be Henry Cavill, and he's a good actor enough to pull off the role. It's just the script that he had. He can only do so much with it.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's tough for me to really as far as relatable and like and so like but I always like Thor just because I like Norse mythology. But all these characters are flawed. Where Superman, like they would literally create powers for him to figure out a certain situation. It's like the shark gun in the 1966 Batman movie, where he had like, "Give me the shark ray," where he had the shark dangling off of him. But I mean, it was over the top. But that was the thing. It was like they would just come up with random. It was kind of the thing was flawed about Jurassic World and the Indominus Rex or whatever it was called. It was like they would just create a power that it's randomly as they were going along the movie, they would just be like, "Oh, now it's got cloaking. Now it's got this. Now it's got that." They're just like creating random things that it has to push along the narrative, rather than just, this is what you have as a character. Figure something else, or figure something complex and a good story around it, rather than make them be a plot point. And so that
Producer Ben is right. It is shark spray, not a shark gun. That is correct.
Okay, yeah, it was a shark spray. It was actually an Easter egg you can find in I think Arkham City is when they showed it like some museum or something. It was a shark spray.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But yeah, so that, and like Deadpool, because Deadpool's just fun. Like he's just like, if people were like, if you could create any like if you give a 12-year-old, it's like, hey, what's a comic book character? I was like, I don't know, some ninja, like some 12-year-old from 1995, because the ninjas were all the big thing. There were surf ninjas, there was three ninjas, there was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. If they found a way to put ninjas in something, because ninjas was a hot item, like the comic book characters are now, or Frozen, and so now it's like Deadpool's like, oh, I like black and I like red, so I was like immediately drawn to him as a character, and then I started reading them, and it was just like you just couldn't help but laugh. And so when I want a character, I want some just wisecracking guy just going about, or girl going about life, and which is not taking life too seriously, but still giving a crap at the end of the day. And through the first, and the thing is Rob Liefeld, all he wanted to do is just draw pouches, so that's why he has so many pouches, and they just play off of it. And going and just seeing him, at least the volume 1 that I've read through of all the comics that they've created with him, and like from his first appearance in X-Men and all that stuff, he was just like your typical assassin, but he didn't crack any jokes or anything like that. He was just basically like Deathstroke. It was Marvel's version of Deathstroke at that point. And then they were like, what if we give him personality, but be more like a rated R Spider-Man type of thing, and he's more of an anti-hero, but he also knows that he's in a comic book, and he likes chimichangas. Why? Because it's fun to say. Like that's literally why it's his favorite food. And then he's just going through everything with like some like just no care in the world, but at the end of the day he still cares, which is why and I'm just kind of drawn to those characters who give a crap, but also at the end of the day they want to have fun with life. And that's why Deadpool's always been my favorite comic, because at the end of the day, I want to read something that it's hard for me to. That's why I'm drawn back to like comedies or something that has a meaning to it, which is why Scrubs is my favorite TV show of all time. It's because it's funny, but it also has a lot of heart. And at the end of the day, it still grounds you in that there is this reality outside that everyone is dealing with, but at the end of the day, you can still crack jokes about it. It doesn't have to be just all doom and gloom. And that's why I was always drawn with, of all the comic book characters, I was always drawn to Deadpool the most, because he kind of presents that as, yes, there's some doom and gloom out there, but there's also some good parts, and it's okay to laugh. Whether or not you liked his jokes, and I always tell people when we saw the first Deadpool came out, it was everything I ever wanted. I mean, I was literally like that.
That's so good.
That hit the whole thing with him and Colossus on the bridge. I mean, I was literally like, I couldn't breathe. I don't remember the last time I laughed so hard, and the pain in the sides laughing as he just starts breaking his bones. And it's like, it's gonna get worse for you, big boy. And his leg just breaks and everything. But a lot of times too, at the end of the movie, I can tell why somebody else wouldn't like it, because that's not their humor. And so a lot of times when I tell people, if you don't like Deadpool, it's okay to not like that character, because he's not for everybody. But to me, that's just like right up my alley. Like if there was a meme going around, I forget, there's just like the little thing of like, pick 3 characters that would make up you. And so I'd be like Chandler Bing, JD from Scrubs, and Deadpool. Like that's those are the 3 characters. I'm like, all right, if you can describe yourself as some like pop culture, well, I'm Chandler in a nutshell. Like I make jokes when I'm uncomfortable. So just every time people are like, I'm Chandler, people are like, yeah. People that have met me like 3 minutes could probably be like, I'm like Chandler Bing. And they're like, yeah, okay, yeah, you definitely are. Because in our past conversations with everybody like talking, and all of a sudden you just hear some wisecracks from me, because that's just what I like to do. I like to find humor.
the wisecracks from you, from Preston, from Tushka, who has been on Soul Talk before, and then Chris, like the four of you, anytime you guys say something, it's completely my sense of humor, which is why I like Deadpool and probably like some of the same stuff that the three of you guys like, because you guys have those like funny like little wisecracks that like sometimes not everyone hears it, and then you just hear me in the background just laughing because I'm like, they just said the most ridiculous thing and I'm here for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I try and find references to everything, and just like, oh, that's a reference to this, that's a reference to that. And a lot of times, like with my friends that I've known forever, like just a little thing I didn't realize was a thing, but like my best friend I've known since I can remember. Like we grew up two doors down from each other until this day. We still talk on a weekly basis, which people always find is kind of crazy. It's like you have that best friend from like, high school or even middle. Most of the time it's like middle school or elementary. Like I've known him my whole life. We're
Oh
29
wow.
days apart.
Oh
So
shit.
yeah, he's May 29th. I'm June 27th. So it's like or no, May 28th. I'm June 27th. So it's literally like 29 days apart that we were born, and just it's all kind of worked out. And but yeah, with that, it's just I've always a lot of times when I'll say something really funny and witty, a lot of people just immediately go, "Where'd you hear that from?" So I'm like, I swear to God, I might have made it up myself. But like, the other day I just was saying something. I was talking to somebody. And I was like, we're not putting any context or anything, but just the way it was said, I was like, we're not murderers, despite what the Undertaker says. And he was like, where'd you hear that from? I was like, The Godfather. He goes, I've never seen it. I said, you should. Um, so it's just like just those little things for some reason. I don't know if I have like movie quote ADD or what, but like whatever scenario comes in, I'm like, I know a bit that this stand up set, or I know this, or I like just for some reason my brain can immediately go to something that reminds me of whatever topic is being discussed or something like that, but at least can bring a little humor to it.
I know it probably annoys people, but my brain is on the same wavelength, but like songs. So if someone says like a phrase that's in a song, like I'll start singing that song, or I'll have the song stuck in my head, and then I'm like, damn it, you like
Right.
now I have that song in my head, and I'm sure that I annoy all of you guys whenever I just start singing randomly.
Don't annoy us. I always just like to. It's not a running gag now. Is me bringing up gummy bears because it's an earworm of all earworms. So the Gummy Bears theme song from the old '90s Disney TV, and so every time I bring that up, Sean just starts singing, and I'm just like, yes, that's right. You have to.
Did it. Sean, also a previous Soul Talk person.
Mm-hmm.
But and then I know you're reading another book, or you started reading another
I
book.
did. Yeah, I don't know if we can curse on here or not.
Yes, you can.
Okay, so it's called The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I've even been like one chapter in to living a good life. So quit sweating the small stuff, guys. That's literally like the first chapter is like this guy. He always wanted to be a reader, but be a writer. But it wasn't like he wasn't enjoying life while trying to be a writer. Because so many times people are focused in on completing this task and being the best they can be at this, but they forget to look, the whole Ferris Bueller thing. It's like life comes at you fast. If you don't take a second to look around, to look around, you might miss it. And that's what the book is trying to say, at least from the first few chapters that I've read. It's just kind of like these stories of people still enjoying life, but accomplishing their goals. It's like we can do both, people. It's not like you have to, all right, I'm going to be the best doctor ever. It's kind of like Patch Adams, like the movie Patch Adams. Like he was a really good doctor, but you could also tell he enjoyed life. Now, I'm not going to ruin the movie or anything, but like the beginning, that's kind of how he approached it. And like Philip Seymour Hoffman's character was so just driven, and he had to work his ass off to do it because he wanted to be the best doctor. But he wasn't having fun. He was just dead set and just dead set on accomplishing this goal. And he had accomplished his goal. There's nothing else. And he didn't stop and just smell the roses a little bit. And that's what the book is trying to say, is like you can do both. But and that's why it's a subtle art, because you still have to care.
Yeah. You still have to give some fucks, not
yes,
all fucks, but
yes.
some fucks.
Kind of like Lin-Manuel Miranda when he got on Hamilton. He literally had to give 2 fucks to get on Disney Plus.
Right.
Yeah, so you do have to give some. You can't give 0. You have to, but yes, have you ever saw that tweet? He did tweet that out. He said, I literally had to give 2 fucks to get on Disney Plus.
What's funny too is in the show too, there's one part where it's like, sit down, John, you fat motherfucker. And then like the fucker's already bleeped in the
Yeah.
original show. So that one was already bleeped, and he's like, yeah, I can bleep the other ones or not have the other ones be
Yeah.
said. Yeah.
So, and then was it like the Southern Democratic Republicans?
Yeah.
Yeah. So and that mother effer like hit hard too with
Yeah.
Barbara.
When you listen to the soundtrack, like if you want to get hype,
Yeah.
randomly, like for real, like I'm not even like, you want to get hype, listen to that song, and they're like Southern motherfucking Democratic Republic, and you're just
I
like,
know.
I'm in.
Yeah, it's like people. What are you? Why is that person like headbanging? You listening to Hamilton? That's what he's doing. It's like why are they? It's like what gets a hype team hyped? They just sit there and chant Southern Democratic motherfucking Republicans.
John Roca needs to listen to it before his next match.
Right? Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
Well, any other thoughts on the subtle art of not giving a fuck?
I just got to finish it. It's gonna be a quick. It's a quick read for a lot of people that I've done. It's just I'm not the biggest reader, but I do also know and just need that I need to consume as much media. It's just unfortunately I consume more visual media than I do actual literature. Which most of the time the most reading that I do is reading the Sports News Junket, which we'll get into later. So a lot of times it's just reading those or just doing deep dives in like just random knowledge of movies and Wikipedia and like going through and finding out like I'm that fun fact guy when I'm watching a movie and my roommate gives on me all the time. She's just like, you have 2 fun facts that you can tell me about this movie. And there's a TikTok of a guy.
Yeah, you're a walking Snapple cap.
Right, I'm a walking Snapple cap. So, or like, there's just like I like the behind the scenes stuff and like how a movie is made, which is a great show on Netflix. And it's just like if you watch that, it's like after every episode of like even like the Ghostbusters, Home Alone, and every time it's just like at the end of the day, just like how does any movie get made? But it's just a really cool exploration of that. And but yeah, she just always tells me that, and but yeah, it's weird that I just
when
like.
you look into how like I've seen the documentary of like Star Wars, the original trilogy, and how they made that, and I'm like, how did this become a thing?
Right.
Like it was so close to not being a thing, but then it is, and now it's a thing that we all love.
Yeah, and then it's like if you want to know why editors are so good for movies, or quintessential to movies, is just watch the behind the scenes of Jaws. Like the shark worked for maybe 4 minutes. Like it was weird. Like it was only like maybe under 30 minutes that the shark actually worked. And they literally was the whole, which the one thing people always hate to hear is fix it in post. That phrase people hate to hear, but they literally, it was a female. Her name is escaping me. She passed away a few years ago. But the editor for Jaws, I mean, Steven Spielberg came out and was like, she is the star of it because she was the one able to put together what Jaws became to be, which is one of the greatest blockbusters, in cinema history. And it wasn't really, I mean, there's worked their butt off to get that made, but she was the one that made that shark what it was, for the fact that it hardly ever worked. So that was something that I always and I learned a lot about Kubrick in some of my broadcasting classes at Western, that he was just way ahead of his time and still is. If you look at some of his, like the 2001 Space Odyssey, it ain't for everybody, but when you actually understand what he was doing and the time period, just like, this guy's a genius at the same time, on that. But yeah, the fun fact stuff, that's always, there's a TikTok of a guy who's like sitting there and you see the Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers, where Viggo Mortensen, Aragorn's character, kicks the helmet and he screams, and the whole time it's just like when you can't sit, when your girlfriend won't let you do fun facts, and like he like spins the camera around to him and he's just like, because he wanted to tell him that, hey, he broke his toe and that was an actual scream when he kicked the helmet. Because everyone, if you know anything about the Lord of the Rings, you know that scene and why he let up that guttural scream, because he literally broke his foot doing it. And it's kind of the same thing with Leonardo DiCaprio and Django Unchained when he slams the table and like breaks his hand, and you're just like, do you know the? You just want to say that. So it's just like those little things, but it just, that's a cool thing too about movies, is those subtle little things that you find out. It's like, in Good Will Hunting, Robin Williams totally ad libbed about that his wife was that farted at night, and like was cracking Matt Damon up. It was just literally just some ad lib thing, or the whole monologue in Blade Runner, just depending on what 7,000 cuts you watched. But that monologue is pretty much all improv, I believe, of that guy. I can be totally wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure he was.
And then even like TV wise, the between Will and Uncle Phil in Fresh Prince of Bel Air.
Why doesn't he love me? Like him just breaking down is more of just Will, just all that stuff from his, like, he was able to find it, which is so great for an actor. Was why some great stuff, but like he just couldn't let Uncle Phil go because that was real. And so just hearing those things just like makes that scene all that more impactful, which is why Django Unchained is one of the key reasons why Django Unchained is my favorite Tarantino, and why Leonardo DiCaprio is just one of the best actors we've ever seen, based off of just that scene alone can give you enough, much less the rest of his work. I
think it's still between Kill Bill and Inglourious Bastards for me as my favorite Tarantino, but Django Unchained is definitely high up there.
Yeah, I did. Inglourious Bastards was all right. I don't know why my voice just cracked, but Inglourious Bastards is fine. I mean, I like Tarantino. One of my buddies just can't stand Tarantino at all, but it's okay. He's like Deadpool. He's not for everybody. I haven't seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but all I heard was good things about it. So
I liked it a lot. It's not my favorite Tarantino, but I liked it a lot. But he makes really good movies. I like all of his movies pretty much.
His dialogue is he's up there as far as like the screenwriters. It's like him, Aaron Sorkin. Aaron Sorkin, he might not be the best director. I forget which movie he directed. It wasn't that great. But most of his scripts are just, his adapted screenplays especially are just, I like that quick-witted talking. I know the West Wing, Walking While Talking, and they kind of got old after a while, but I mean, just that's me, is that fast, quick dialogue. That's why Hot Fuzz is one of my...
Gilmore Girls. That's fast, quick dialogue too. I love that.
Yeah, show. It is very entertaining. I'm not gonna lie, it is very entertaining. I haven't finished it or anything like that, but that's why I like Scrubs. I mean, it's that fast, witty talk. That's why I like, and we're getting to it, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Psych, those type of shows. And then that's why I liked Hot Fuzz a lot, and that's why Edgar Wright's one of my favorite directors. I like that quick cut type of thing. Is like, we don't have to spend, but they use it as an art style and not just like Bohemian Rhapsody, where they have like them sitting at a dinner table and like there was like 20 cuts and they all had to have a wide shot type of thing.
Or the Taken movie where like you have,
he jumps over the fence,
the amount of cuts.
The amount of cuts. Like there's a point where you can use editing to be artistic, like Edgar Wright uses it, or there can be just annoying, which is taken like there was like 20 clips of him hopping over the fence. And then the shaky cam stuff, it was like going back and watching The Bourne Identity. It's definitely The Bourne Ultimatum. I mean, just the action, that what they did was great. But yeah, when it's unnecessary editing or cuts, it's just like, it gets annoying. And the fact that Bohemian Rhapsody won Best Editing at the Oscars, I'm like, are they doing it by count? Like, how do you get Best Editing out of that movie? Because
I will say I enjoy that movie, but I agree with you on the editing.
Yeah, the editing is just, no, it's an enjoyable film. Yeah.
Especially too when you're like, oh, now I'm just at the very end of the movie, the last 30 minutes, I'm just listening to the music of Queen, which is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, and like just seeing the story, and they really didn't go too far deep into the dark side of Queen and what all they went through. And I think, but that's, if you, again, fun facts, if you kept up with RIP Movie Talk on Collider and stuff, I mean, they talked about how the surviving members didn't want it to be super dark.
Yeah, they were heavily
involved. And it's not like they didn't turn out a very good movie. I mean, I enjoyed it. But it's just the fact of me knowing that there were some other things I would love to be explored that we just didn't get. It's not the fact that it was a bad film, because it left me wanting more. But I just knew that there was a much more in-depth movie.
Like the difference with like Elton John, he was just like, you can listen and see all of my shit and all of my like things that I did wrong.
And it was
like, I don't care.
Right. It was more of a musical than it was an actual movie. And of course, I really liked Rocket Man. I went back and watched it a couple of more times, but I grew up on Elton John, so
Mhm.
you know
Who
it's
didn't?
and yeah, right. So, but I know some people that didn't like it because they were wanting more of the Bohemian Rhapsody, and they got Rocket Man,
Yeah,
which is much more of a. It was like it kind of hopped over. It kind of hopped from place to place. Where Queen was a steadily biopic type of movie. So if people aren't used to those type of beats, which is what I liked about Knives Out, is because it wasn't your typical murder mystery. It was like no, this and that threw me off for a second. But then I saw what they after I started watching the movie, I was like, wow, that was really well done because it's just a different take on it. But yeah, Rocket Man it's not the best movie I've ever seen, but the way when they it's kind of it's just like what you would want. How can I put it? The Greatest Showman is I don't care for that movie as a
I
movie.
haven't seen it.
It to me is just it's the soundtrack is incredible, but it's just a bunch of music videos with a terrible overall. It's like I've seen better. It's up
And
there
it's
with
very inaccurate too. P.T.
yes.
Barnum was not a good dude.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to watch a totally all over the place musical, watch Moonwalker, the Michael Jackson movie. I mean, it's like great music. The whole movie itself is not that great.
But to keep this on the roll, because we're still in our recent reads, even though we ventured a little bit into movie talk there, but we'll go into my recent read this past week, and that is The Goddess Twins. So this is by Yadasa Williams, and it is a indie publisher, like indie book. So she wrote it. She out of her own pocket decided to have this book not go through a publisher. And so I always want to support indie authors, just like I want to support like indie movies as well, because they're really doing stuff out of pocket and finding ways to create their art and not have to deal with all the bullshit of a publishing company or
Mm-hmm.
a giant movie company and like things like that. So this book, you have these two twin girls. They're at the beginning, they're living in Ohio, and for 2 years they've basically been living there. But before that, their mom was this famous singer who they traveled around the world, and they were going from place to place. And one of the twins, Aurora, was just like, Mom, we need to stay in one place. Like, I'm tired of never getting to know anyone, never making roots, none of this kind of thing. And so it's about to be their birthday, and their mom was like, I have a gig, even though she promised not to, for until they turned 18, to not do any like gigs. She leaves and she misses their birthday. And like Arden, who is like the more disciplined twin, is like, oh, it's okay, Mom, I still love you. Where like Aurora is the twin that's like, I'm pissed and I don't want to
Mm-hmm.
have to deal. And then they find out through there's a lot of twists and turns that I don't want to spoil for people, but they find their mom ends up going missing and they have to go to London, hop on a plane, and then they find out that they and their family have certain powers that their mom didn't let them know about, and that's why they were always moving around a lot, is that's they were able to protect them from the family that was going after them and other things like that. So there's like at the beginning you're like, wow, this is a shitty mom, and then at the end you're like, oh, you find out the reasons why she was doing
Yeah.
the things that she was doing. And so it's a very interesting book. I think I gave it a 4 out of 5 on Goodreads, and I would recommend it definitely too, because it's an indie author, so I'm always gonna want to support and be like, people go read this book. But yeah, it's definitely very interesting. And then there's a few like family members that like they end up being good at the end, but throughout the book I'm like, you're suspicious and I don't like you. I'm watching to make sure, see, and then they didn't do the thing that they thought they were going to do, and I was like, oh, okay. I was like, I still don't really like you that much, but you, at least you weren't evil like I thought you were going to be.
Right. Kind of sounds like a Dark Shadows type of vibe. Is that what kind of the book? It's like the family. Well, I mean, in that, because I watched the movie, not a good movie, by the way. So I don't know if you read the book. The one with Ald Niederreich and Emmy Rossum. Was that what it called? It wasn't the Shadow of Bones, right? It was the Dark Shadows or whatever.
Beautiful Creatures, was that?
Oh, yeah, I think it was Beautiful
Creatures. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't read that book or watch the movie, but like I knew somewhat of the plot of that.
Yeah, and it's basically like a family, and I think it's like witches, but on their whatever birthday, they either become just evil for some reason, or they become good. And it's just
Yeah.
like but they get their but she already knew that, so it's like kind of like you can kind of tell it's like a multitude. I'm kind of guessing here, but it's a multitude of different YA type of
Mm-hmm.
fantasy style novels where they're going through and like resenting everything, but because of them not knowing, and then once they find out, them coming to grips with that reality because their world
Right.
just got turned upside down. And it's just and it takes a good author nowadays because it's been done.
Yeah.
So the fact that it was a 4 out of 5 definitely makes me intrigued, because obviously it has to be for a story that has something like it's kind of like a rom-com. Like you got to come
Mm.
something different than the kiss at 59 minutes from a Lifetime movie.
Right.
You got to come with something different, or it's the same. Now some people like the same beats, just that type of thing. But when it comes to novels, you want a little bit different.
Yeah.
A murder mystery, even though it's them solving a murder, it's always a different situation. It's just like I don't know how they're going to solve this one, but it's just like how do they figure out to make it not seem so, something that you've read before or something you've
Right.
seen before. So that's awesome. Yeah, definitely have to look at that.
And there was moments too, like in the book, where I was just like, I don't know where they're going with this, and like if it had ended at that moment, it would have been a lower rating. But there was moments there where you're just like, oh, they're not doing what I think they're gonna do, and it's not like you need to not have something predictable. Like I think people were arguing, which we'll talk about WandaVision later. They were like, oh, if they don't like what you're predicting things right, then you have to change everything to make it so that way people don't predict stuff. And I'm like, no, that's not right. Like people should be able to accurately predict things. Sometimes that means you're telling a good story because
Right.
it's logically going down a road. So, but this, I also like stories too where you can't really predict what's going to happen and it still logically makes sense at the end.
Yeah.
So like there's different ways to storytelling, and like there's a lot of times too it's like so many stories have already been told,
Right.
and it's a lot of times it's the same story being told, but if you can find some way to make it new or some way to make it interesting.
Yeah, it's just like Out Cold 2001. You take Casablanca, put it at a ski resort in Alaska. I mean, it's with and hilarity and put snowboards instead of some South Africa. Is that where they were technically located? I forget. But
North Africa.
I forget where
In
Casablanca,
Morocco.
Morocco. Thank you. It's been a sec. I would totally not get that. Don't write that down, Sean. That I'll miss that question. Inside joke. But yeah, that's yeah. I get what you're saying there because like with um, predicting things. We'll get into that as far as like of some things that I predicted and it was cool because it meant that it was good foreshadowing.
Mhm.
Whereas if it doesn't become, don't get disappointed. But we'll get into that
Yeah,
later.
exactly. So let's go into our recent TV's watch. So what have you been watching?
So I have been watching obviously Superman and Lois. I did not think I was going to like this at all. I've watched Arrow, all the Arrowverse. I've tried, at least. I've tried. Arrow was great for the first 2 seasons, and then after that, you can tell they didn't know what the heck they didn't know where they were going to go with the show. Flash, same thing. By like season 4, you can tell that it just got convoluted and watered down, and then you realize the acting wasn't as good as you thought it was, but you were just blind by the fact that it was decent storytelling and you were into the plot. And then Legends of Tomorrow, I couldn't even get through the first episode of Batwoman, and then Supergirl, which at the start, of course, that was on NBC before it got on CW, but it literally was The Devil Wears Capes. Like that was how it started out. And like there was like like the second episode was her trying to be Supergirl, but then also babysit somebody. And I'm like, come on, like just come up with something better than that. Like I couldn't buy into it. It took me out of it. Just how like I'm trying to be here, but I'm also trying to stop this evil villain. And but little Susie didn't get her sippy cup. Like to me, that just I don't know. I just don't really care for that. But Superman and Lois, like at the jump, you're just like, not to spoil anything. I'm like, this is the take that they're going. I've never seen this take, and you could understand the struggles that Superman actually goes through. But it's not just some like need to get the girl a sippy cup. It's some real life stuff that he and it's not like he's just going through it alone. He has Lois, and Lois is trying to, and it's a much more grounded Superman. Is Hecklin, I think his last name, Tyler Hecklin, that plays Superman. He's fine. It's still hard for me to realize that he's Superman, but I've it's just more of a Clark than a Superman.
Hmm.
But even the action in it is not super cheesy, especially with the budget they have, the way it's shot, at least so far for the first 3 episodes. It's really good. But I still worry with the same thing that every CW show hits is that third season wall where they have really 2 strong, maybe even 3 seasons. I think the Flash had 3, and then after that they just run out of places to go. It's just like Flash, he's defeated 2 super speeders. What are we going to do for the 4th season? Create another super speeder. Like, come on, just figure something else out.
Yeah.
And so right now there's an ultimate threat, but that's not the point of the show. And and this is the best Superman that I've presented. It does get away, and there's some a lot of people are like, it's grounded, and he's got, this is the present, and they're like, well, I wonder if there's some teen angst involved. And the people the actors and actresses that are involved with it, yeah, the writing can get a little cheesy here and there because it's CW at the end of the day, but it's the least angsty that I've seen, and the actors coming across are, and it's, you can see where they can come to that conclusion rather than just be like, I hate you for hating you because I'm supposed to as a character. Like, it doesn't come across as that, where they're like character switches and they don't chew the scenery that much. At least the person that has the most quote unquote angst in the show. So I just, I can't recommend it enough, at least to try. Even if you're into comic books and and you don't really care for Superman, I'd say give this a shot. So that's, I'm one of the most people that, like, I like Man of Steel as far as it's fine, but it's just I can't get over Superman just being like, I am the best thing ever and I'm going to do everything right. Superman makes so many mistakes in Superman and Lois, so many, and he's just trying to overcome them. And it's just the most mundane things, but you really like I get that struggle, man, because they humanize him in Superman and Lois.
That's good, because I've said before too that I'm not the biggest Superman fan, and I haven't seen this show yet. When they first announced it, I was like, "Oh, it's another CW show that I'm not gonna watch." And I was like, and then it's Superman, which I'm not the biggest fan of. There's a few Superman properties that I like, and then I just keep hearing really good things about it, and then hearing that you like it and you're not the biggest Superman fan. And I think you and I kind of have the same view on comic book characters. I'm just like, okay, then yeah, maybe I should check this out.
Yeah, I just remember, like, I've watched it and I was just like, people were like, it's really good. I'm like, it's CW, and I don't buy him as Superman at all. Like, Henry Cavill, that's Superman. And yeah, even Ben was saying that he even said he was great and he was skeptical going in because it's CW, and they start us. But the only thing is you're not going to trick me this time, CW. Like, this, what you presented me so far is really good, but don't you season 4 me like you do every show, where they just run out of ideas. Like, you gotta have at least end it. One or the other. You either end it or you keep going. Now, the good thing about this compared to the other CW shows is that they've limited their episodes. That's a lot of things that happen. Okay. So there's not there's not that 22 episode arc, because it's tough to do when you like that. Like, we're going to WandaVision here in a second, and even with the Falcon Winter Soldier and even Loki, like what Marvel's doing, or even what they did on Netflix with the Daredevil series and Jessica Jones.
Some of those is like, I like that it's 13 because I get more, but it doesn't need to be 13 episodes.
No, because you're gonna have a lot of filler, and it's gonna, and you're just like that episode. Like, even Mandalorian had like 9 episodes, and sometimes you're just like that episode 2 in the last season. When you just went to that ice planet, you're just like, what was the reason for that? And that was only 8 seasons. I mean, 8 episodes. So like, the fact that they're only doing so little is like, okay, we have a story here. We need to hit all these beats, but we don't need to shove advertisement and make, like, it's going to give us our money. And if it's a good show, then it doesn't really matter. And that's what that's the difference between the BBC and American television. It's because most of their episodes are like maybe 6 episodes a season. because that's all they need to tell. Like they don't need
Or
to.
Sherlock is 3 episodes, but they're an hour and a half each.
Right, they're
A
each
season.
basically a movie.
Yeah.
Their whole season is three movies,
Yeah.
which I liked Sherlock season 1 and 2, and then after that it just fell flat. But
Yeah.
again, season
I
3,
will
I don't
agree
know,
with that.
season 3, I'm just like really, but yeah. So Superman and Lois, 3 episodes in, it just keeps getting better because I think, and the reason is it kind of comes down to my last statement before you took over, chimed in, and it's because it's a grounded Superman, and it's just like that. Most of the time, it's people with most Superman products. It's Superman trying to deal with him being just the most powerful guy on the planet, or somebody, or the audience view, or I mean the other characters view of having this, dealing with a person that's just so powerful, and that, is he a threat? Is he not a threat? We don't know. Blah, blah, blah. They don't deal with that. Okay. It's just because, well, again, stories we've already seen before when it comes to Superman, and he's just like, no, I'm a good guy, guys, trust me. Like we're over that. It's just him, very grounded, just going through. It sounds, I know it kind of sounds boring, but they present it in a way that you're like, oh, okay, Superman actually has to deal with that, and I don't want to spoil it, but I was surprised on, again, I know I'm repeating myself, but yeah, it's grounded Superman that we've never seen before, and they do really well with it.
And it's just went higher to my list now because of yours and Ben in the background's recommendation. So I will be
Yeah.
watching it, people. So I'll probably have my thoughts about it in a future Soul Talk episode. But what other TV have you been watching?
So the other TV stuff that I have been watching, I always like to go back and watch things because I just, I started Ozark. I mean, Stranger Things season 4 hasn't happened yet. I'm waiting for that. And most of others, like the dramas that I used to watch. And nowadays with COVID and all this other stuff that goes on, I just want to feel good. So most of the time when I come home and just debrief from the world that I've with the work, I watch, Psych, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Leverage, and I know Brooklyn Nine-Nine. It's going to be their last season. Only going to be 10 episodes. It's I hope they don't do like they did with you know what New Girl, where they really wanted to cancel the show, but they were like, no, we've got. So they just gave them seven episodes. Like Fox didn't even want to do the last season of New Girl, so they just ended up having to give them like seven. All right, fine, here's 7 episodes. So, and I think it was the fans or something like that on top of the cast, because I think Jake Johnson just came out and confirmed that. But Brooklyn Nine-Nine, again, Andy Samberg, the guy that it's the same. He's his character Jake Peralta is the same as Sean and Gus and Psych. That's JD and Scrubs. He's like, if Chandler Bing was a cop, right? Jake Peralta really cares, but he also is a child. Like, and that's just kind of how I'm still a child at heart. Like, I just can't help it. So any type of character that's wisecracking, or like he's like that Deadpool character. So anytime you present me with a character and you present good cast members around them, it's great because like Hitchcock and Scully, that's the that is the most I've ever laughed at the same joke about two people over and over and over again. They're like, "What's Hitchcock and Scully? Oh, they're lazy and they're bad at their job and they're fat. Cool. This should get old." Going into season 8, love every single thing that they do with Hitchcock and Scully to the end of this day. So that's just good writing. And just being bubbling idiots. I mean, obviously, they would never survive at any job. They would have been fired 7 years ago before the show even started. But they're just such good characters on the show that it works. And you get the love angle with him and Amy Peralta, and then him just needing a father figure and them exploring that, with that, but still putting that great humor. It's just credit to how, like, it's funny cops. Ooh, we've never seen that before. Right. I think there was a roast of, I forget, but Bill Hader was on there being like the president of Hollywood, and Andy Samberg was there, and he was like being the president of Hollywood, just telling all the guys on there that, you're welcome, that I made you. And he was like Andy Samberg, funny cops, how original, because we've seen funny cops for, to the end of time. And it's just like, how did this show last for 8, it got killed and picked up by a main network within like 24 hours, with less than 24 hours. and still lasted for 3 seasons on that network, and it's been for 8. And every episode is just every season has been fun, like just as good as the next. It doesn't really wear down, hasn't wear down, unlike The Office, where after, but all the actors haven't left except for Gina on the show, but that's just because Chelsea Peretti, I just think, just had a kid and she just wanted to kind of focus in on being a mother. And she's married to Jordan Peele, so it's not like she really strapped for cash.
Right.
So it's not like she. But I still liked her character on the show. But she was the only one that left, so it wasn't like Steve Carell leaving. He's kind of the heart of the show. It's the same thing with if Andy Samberg left the show, or I forget Captain Holt's actor name, but like anytime those staples of the show, they leave. It's not, and you're trying to replace them, but you can't replace what they brought, and you don't want to create the same character, quote unquote. Like that's what happened with that '70s show. Just people like Topher Grace left, and they try to replace him with somebody that's exactly like Topher Grace's character,
and it just didn't work.
It just didn't work because just like might as well just have Topher Grace. But so
and
that's
they
what
said we're like, oh, he's over in Africa.
Yeah, or something like that. So it's just kind of and say what you want about 2.5 Men, still the same. When Charlie Sheen left the show, it tanked real quick. It's just because it's not like, even if you don't like it, that's just kind of what happens sometimes. So that's why Brooklyn Nine-Nine has been so steady. Is because whenever there was never a season 9 of Scrubs, but that's just what happens when the main person, the heart and soul of the show, leaves. It's tough to keep going, but money. So
I'm trying to think what like the last season of Parks and Recs would have been like if Amy Poehler was like, "Nah, I'm not coming back."
Right. I'm not saying I teared up during that last whole season of Parks and Rec, but yeah, there was a TikTok of this little mini horse, like it was running and then it accidentally tripped and fell, and then like immediately cut into "Bye bye, little Sebastian," and I just like cracked up laughing. And then I guess moving on to Psych, I'm going back and exploring it. And I just forgot how funny and quick-witted and like the chemistry between Dule Hill and the guy who plays Sean Spencer's James Roday. But then with the other characters, you can tell that they were having so much fun making that show. And they were so involved, and then the catchy theme song was written and performed by the creator. Like it wasn't, they didn't hire any artists or anything like that. It sounds like Counting Crows, but it's not Counting Crows. And it's just such a stupid premise, and it came out the same time that The Mentalist was on TV, which is the exact same type of show where he was just like, and how he became what he was because, and like in the pilot, like most of the time the pilots are like, you can kind of tell what they're going to do. It's like, but then they finally found their footing in like the second and third episode. But the first episodes, it's like you stick with the show because you can see the skeletons there. You just don't have enough of the other parts. It's just missing a couple things here and there, but you stick with it. Where it was already good to go. Kind of the same thing with the Superman and Lois pilot. I'm like, wow, this is one of the best pilots I've seen in quite some time. And it's kind of the same thing with Psych. It's just like, what I don't get it. And it's like, and then the fact that it's called Psych, and he had to be a psychic just so he can get out of being accused for this robbery. And then he creates a private PI firm that's called Psych because he's not really a psychic. I mean, it's just like those little, and it's just like and he's such a kid. And they use so many like 80s references. Like he's super obsessed with anything 80s on the show. And it always kind of goes back to just life lessons though that he learned as a child, and then because it goes a flashback of like him and his dad was not the best. He was much more of a stricter dad, and he was teaching him like all these, because his dad was a cop, and so he was teaching him like all these life lessons, but like survival tests, and just like his childhood was just crazy. So that's why as he got older, he never stopped wanting to be a child, because his dad never really wanted him to be one. So that's why you can't, and like, so it does have layers. It's not just them just going around, but that's really another thing, like the dynamic between him and his best friend, because it's kind of like that Ferris Bueller meets a private, because he's always like, Gus is such a, like Dule Hill's character is such like I don't think I should do that, but he just can't help but go along, because he wants to be along for the ride, and he's cautionary. He's like, I don't know if you should do this, but he can't help but keep going along because he wants that thrill. And but they can tell that they can't do anything without each other, and it's kind of funny at the bromance that they do. But it's just like one of those like, oh, I don't know what else to watch. I'll just throw on Psych in a random episode, and it just and like the jokes come back, and just like, wow, this is just good stuff. It's over the top, super over the top, but there's a reason that they keep going back and making movies for it.
Right.
You know, and then kind of going off with, did you have anything to say about that?
Oh no, I've watched a few episodes of Psych. I haven't seen the whole thing. It's what I've seen is really funny, but yeah, just thinking about all the like the shows is like, oh, this is what I put on to feel good and laugh, and it's just, especially now in these times, where it's just like you just want to laugh and like have a funny, ridiculous premise of a show.
Right. Yeah. And then yeah, it's just if you want to do something and you like little mysteries here and there. And it's a really well-made show. Again, that was back when USA first started. Like that was like their first show that they did, and then like Monk came out, and I forget
What
that.
was the show that the spy that got burned?
Burn Notice.
Burn Notice. Yeah, I used to
Yeah.
watch Burn Notice on USA.
Yeah, and they all had that kind of that same like it was shot the kind of the same. It's kind of like the CW
Yeah.
and all like the Arrowverse. Like it was all kind of shot the same, and all kind of was presented the same way and had kind of the same writing. There was Parker, forget her name. There was where she was like an FBI agent or CIA operative or something like that. That was one of them. And there was another show where she was this character was a sports psychiatrist. It's Unnecessary Roughness or something like, or Necessary Roughness is what it was called. And it kind of
would have been funnier if it was unnecessary.
Well, that was a movie, so I'm pretty sure they couldn't use that. But yeah, there was it was a fun thing there, and so it kind of launched a lot. Was a staple of USA Network, but then like it just ran its course, got to 8 seasons, and you can tell the actors are ready to move on. But they still come back. They've done I think 2 or 3 movies. But the only thing is one of the actors, Timothy Olmanson, suffered a stroke, and so he wasn't in the first. He was only in one of the first movies, and then they got him on, but you can just tell, and it sucks. And just seeing him, in the original series, and if for all those 90s kids out there, he was in The Luck of the Irish. He played the leprechaun, Luck of the main antagonist.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah, I know who that is. Then
yeah. Yeah, Timothy Olmanson was in The Luck. Every time I saw him, I was like, boyo. Like he would just say that every 4 seconds in The Luck of the Irish.
Was that theatrically released, or was that just on
that
Disney
was
Channel?
That was a Disney original movie.
Okay, because I was trying to think like, oh, we could ask that question, but nope.
No, we can't ask. That's a Disney Channel original movie. Oh yeah, he was in Gallivant. And yeah, he was as a king. I never got around to watching it, but yeah, once he was in Gallivant, I think that was right around when he suffered a stroke. And because they had all these parts written for him for the first movie, supposed to be in there, but I mean, just medical reasons. They were to get him back on, and then it was kind of funny. There was an episode where he falls in love with this girl, and it was but they think that she's a vampire, and it was played by the actress who played the original Buffy the Vampire Slayer from the 1980s movie. I thought that was kind of cool. So they always bring back like old 1980s stars and everything, and like he's obsessed with like Billy Zane and stuff, and Val Kilmer and like all that. So just like actors from the 80s. And then kind of moving on to Leverage, which those are like the other show that I'm watching. If you're into like the Ocean's 11, but they're trying to take down Fortune 500 companies who are screwing the little guy, that is, and it's on Amazon Prime with like a commercial in between. It's like one commercial and that's it. I don't know how that's set up that way, especially since you're paying for
not like a WandaVision commercial, a legitimate commercial.
No, like a legitimate commercial, not like you're trying to look into things to see if Mephisto shows up. No, it's a legit commercial. Cialis commercial, your typical, things that you're looking for, trying to sell you a vacuum or whatnot.
Skippable or not?
What?
Skippable?
No, I don't think it's skippable. But it's not annoying. It's not like watching Superman and Lois right now. For some reason, you can't watch it on Hulu you have to go to the CW website, and there's a lot of commercials in between, unfortunately. But it's good enough content that you'll get through it.
You suffer
Um,
through.
yeah, you'll suffer through it because it's good enough content. Leverage, that's pretty much it. There's like a commercial, and then there might be a commercial like in the middle, and then there might be one at the end. So it's not a whole lot of things there, but it's literally like there's a grifter, there's a thief, there's a tech, guy that likes to hack things. There's a hitter, so he's like the muscle of the group, and then there's the brains of the operation. So he's like the George Clooney, and then everyone's got their own little thing, and how they kind of come together. They were being tricked, and then so they decided to get back at the other person, but the main character used to be a head of an insurance company that ended up being drag racing outside of Seoul.
Oh yeah, Fast and Furious happening
Fast and
outside.
Furious,
Vin Diesel's out there.
Yeah, family. Live quarter inch by a mile. I live my life quarter inch by yeah. Anyway, quarter of a mile. Yeah, I live my life by a quarter of a mile. Anyway, so yeah, but it was originally on TNT. It would last for 5 seasons. I think there was like maybe 10 or 13 episodes a season. But it's really, it's just a feel good thing. Is it far fetched on how they get away with a bunch of stuff? Yeah. I mean, but still, Ocean's 11 too was just kind of like, there's just a lot of plot holes when it comes to heist scenarios.
There always is.
It just is. So you're just gonna have to go in there and just be like, did you have a good time? Cool. And they're also.
I'm here for a show that's eat the rich. I'm here for it.
So it's just them just getting back at people that were taken advantage of. So they, there's like people in this world take advantage of the little guy. We steal it back for you. We provide leverage. So that's kind of like that. Yeah, it's the gist of it. But yeah, he ends up, and of course all the characters, are doing with their own thing. They all have their little quirks and whatnot. But it's just feel good TV. But yeah, I would definitely you would enjoy it. It's just it's the good character dynamics and everything like that, and even the struggle that the main actor. He's an Oscar-nominated actor too.
Nice.
Yeah, I forget what I think Saint Elmo's Fire was. Is that he was? I forget what he was nominated for. Timothy Hutton. I forget his. Anyway, if you bring up the picture, it's the guy in the middle. Everybody will know who he is. But yeah, bring up the picture and I kind of explain like what each character does on the side there.
Ben, if you could, yeah.
Yeah. So the guy with the long hair on the far, I guess left, right. I don't know how it's gonna appear. That's the hitter. That's Elliot. The grifter is the girl with the brunette. And she's in the show. She's a stage actress, but she's a terrible actress. But she's a really good grifter. And then the guy in the middle, he's the brains. Girl Parker, she's just like doesn't. She's kind of like she was an orphan, and she's really quirky. Like she doesn't understand how the world works, but she really knows how to like. She's just really into stealing stuff. And then Aldous Hodge, who played Jim Brown in One Night in Miami recently. That's him there. And he played. He was in.
He looks so different.
Yeah. I think it was Jim Brown. Yeah, was it Jim? Yeah, was it Jim Brown that he played? I believe. Yeah. In One Night in Miami, he played in.
He put some muscle on to play Jim Brown.
He was also in Straight Outta Compton. He played MC Ren in Straight Outta Compton. So he's been in some movies since this show, but he plays the tech genius. Now there is some stereotypical stuff. He always drinks orange soda, so there's some stereotypical stuff in there. But it's a good, and it's them just stealing from the little guy, and them having to deal with the fact that they're always thieves. Like that's what they are. So they're still anti-heroes because they're still doing, some very, they're like Robin Hood, but they make some decisions that like, is that the best decision? Is that the best, PC way of doing things? No, but they get the job done at the end of the day. They're still, so that's another thing too, is like, there's a good character driven show with a cool premise, and it's shot and presented to a way that it's just a good feel good TV.
So I was looking on IMDb, and Timothy Hutton won in 1981 for Ordinary People.
Ordinary People. Okay. That's what it was.
I have not seen that, but
I have not seen it either. The guy with the long hair, his name was like Christian Kane or something like that. He was actually, he actually had like a country career. He wasn't that bad. He had a couple songs that I actually liked. Um, and then
Is it weird that I'm like, I could see him as a country singer?
yeah, yeah, and like the whole time he was just like, because he's just been through all this stuff as a hitter, being a mercenary all over the globe or whatever. He was just like, oh, that's a AK blah blah blah. Like, how do you know that? He's like, it has this. It's like this by the sound. He goes, really? He goes, it has a very distinctive sound. And it's just like, or like he says it about his knives and like all that stuff. It's just like they have their little tropes that they go about with. So couldn't recommend it enough.
Short preview for one of the movies we're going to discuss, but I think you'll really like The Losers if you like this show on the present, the premise. There we go. Words are hard. On the premise of what this show is about.
Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, every time I saw The Losers, I'm like, yeah, I'd probably like that. I would always like it'd be like when I would catch it on TV because it was on TV. It's one of those TNT ones that would just run on TNT all the time. I just never got around to watching The Losers, and I'm just like, it has a cast that I like. It has a premise that I like. I think it came out like right when like Ocean's 11 came out and stuff. So I was just like, and I saw Ocean's 12, and I was just like, man, they rushed that. And then I saw Ocean's 13. I'm like, that was good. I remember. And then Ocean's 8 was like, that's fine. I just didn't like the ending of it. I didn't like care for the Act 3 of Ocean's 8. But other than that, I like the cast when it comes to heist stuff. But yeah, Leverage it's just a feel good, them taking from the rich to give to the poor. It's pretty corny sometimes because I mean it's a TNT produced show.
Yeah.
So
if it's TNT, it's gonna be corny.
Yeah.
Just like if it's CW, it's gonna be corny too.
Mm-hmm. They're not gonna have the biggest budget to do stuff. So, but that's when you really have to get the right cast, the right writers to create. It's not as goofy it's not as goofy as Psych, but it's also very lighthearted but heartfelt as well. So every person that's watched Leverage that I've recommended to is like, it's a good show. I had a good time. And it just takes your mind off of this crazy world that we're in.
Sounds good. It sounds like another one that I'll be adding to my queue. Hopefully we'll have time to get around to it between all the books and movies.
Right.
Which, unfortunately, this week I don't have any TV shows, so we're going to go straight into our movies. Although we will talk WandaVision, but we're going to do that at the end of the episode because we cannot talk WandaVision without going into spoilers. And so we want to make sure for those who have not seen it, if you haven't seen it yet, which, come on now. But we're being nice. So we'll go into recent movies. So what movies have you been watching?
So the movies that I've been watching, obviously Raya and the Last Dragon. I don't know if we both seen this. I don't know if you want to talk about it now or you want to talk about it later.
We can talk about it now.
Okay, so Raya and the Last Dragon is the most recent movie that I've seen. This is some of the best animation I've seen in quite some time. And talk about world building. Good Lord. And it has this weird, like, there's a couple of plot holes here and there, but all the characters that they introduced, like, you like them. Do you think that should they have gone more in depth with them? Sure, but you understood the world they were in and how each tribe, like, how they worked. Each tribe was different, but you understood how they worked and how they, but how they're trying to the Kamundra, I think it's called, what it's called, like, that's the name of the land, but it also means peace. Like, it just that they are always striving for doing that, but they don't understand. But the education of each tribe was a little bit different, so they think that what they're going after is, some all-powerful thing, and some other place is just holding it over, where the other place knows what it represents and is trying to, bring peace. But they just think they're like laughing at them in their face. And it just, and then like when the dragon appears, and you think, like, from the previews, you're like, is this going to be corny? And it wasn't. And the jokes actually landed for me most of the time. And I just, if you're into fantastical worlds, good characters, great animation, I can't talk about it enough. I mean, literally, like the water, the colors that they present, but it's not like they're doing the colors just for the sake of doing it. Like they all make sense on why it's there.
Different
So
animation styles too when they're talking about different tribes.
right,
Like, oh, so good.
so good. I mean, even like the facial expressions that they
Hmm.
have. Like I'm not going to spoil anything, but when the one character sees her, and all you can tell by her facial expression of what she is thinking and what is going through her mind. And this is animation, so that says a heck of a lot that you can pull that off.
Right.
And I can't recommend this movie enough if you like animation. You know, then this is the best animation. Like I went back, I've watched it a second time, and it's still not going to overtake like Rango or Aladdin because I don't know, just it just hits. And Goofy movie, like it just. But as far as like overall animation, like if this thing does not win the Oscar, it's going to take something really special to beat it to me.
Yeah.
As
And
far as
I think too the lessons in this movie, like even from right at the beginning where so they switch up animation styles when she's talking about each of the
hmm
different tribes and she's talking about them from just stories she's heard. She hasn't been to those tribes yet. And then like the father was like, "Oh, well they probably think this about us." And it just shows you kind of like stereotypes and how
hmm
like you can think of a certain thing and you just know it because of I thought like to everyday life like oh I might only know about this type of people because of the media I watch or the like what's going on and I might not actually know anything about it because I I haven't been there I haven't experienced that and I think that just happens all the time too in real world and that's why like they're so divided in the movie and I'm like oh this is so much about why we're divided now
hmm
in real life too and it's just like if we could just stop and have conversations with people and actually go try to like know people and try to like experience their lives as well there might be some more commandra some more peace.
Right. Because I mean, there's so many times in the movie where they're like, "I'm trying to do this," and they're like, "No, you're not. There's something, but I know you're plotting something." And just like it's in it, yeah. It's like the whole overarching thing was trust. Like that literally was the whole overarching kind of story, and the main thing that was going with, and it didn't force it down your throat. Like it was just like, oh, it was more like like, oh, okay, I see where they're going here. It's not just like you have to trust people and you have to do it because it's trust. And it's like you have a drinking game. How many times does it say trust? Like you just never you. It's just it's an overarching story, but the way that's great storytelling. Now they had like 8 writers, so I figured they could figure it out. But sometimes they've had but the more heads in the hands in the cookie jar. Sometimes you come with a convoluted mess. Um, but yeah, you can get that right. I mean, and a lot of times it's just like you hear things, but then when you actually like meet that person, you're like, oh, okay, there's a lot more depth to that person than I thought there was. Don't tell it to them before because that's most. I've had that off-putting compliment. We're like, oh, you know what? You're a lot cooler than I thought you were. I'm like, what is that supposed to mean? Um, so that's like feeling like a winner and a loser at the same time. But I've had true story. I've had that compliment. I've had that.
It's like you first looked like an asshole, but then now that I got to know you, I don't think you're an asshole.
Right.
Thanks.
Thanks. I don't know how to take that. So yeah, that's just. But Raya, I can't recommend it enough. I know you and um, the second act was a little rushed. As far as anything I have against it, the second act was a little rushed, but the overall, like you were saying, like the overall arcing, the lessons in it were really good, but they didn't force them down your throat, which is very tough to do nowadays, which turns a lot of people off, including me. I don't like something forced. I want to enjoy the movie and then understand and figure out the lessons, or I can get where they're going with it, rather than they're like, you have to do it this way, or it's, and what I'm talking, like people know when you get force fed certain things, it just turns a viewer off because they go somewhere to escape something. If they go into something and they're being force fed something, it's not fun. Where this was very lighthearted, but it also I don't know, just Raya was a great character. That sword thing, whatever, how to describe it. The action, it was great. Just can't recommend it enough. And like I said, if it doesn't get the Oscar, And some people don't. I know some people are like, I didn't really care for the characters. And that's fine. I'm not one of those people like, I can't believe you didn't like the movie. Like,
Right.
everybody likes
And
everything.
I think too the pacing issues that it has, which like when I say issues, it's such like a minor issue to me
Yeah.
when watching the movie, is that it is a kids movie, and so they make them much quicker. And I was just like one of those moments where it's just like, I wish it was just like maybe like 20-30 minutes longer.
Yeah, and but that to me, that's the sign of a good movie. Is like as soon as it's like, man, I wish they would have explored that a little bit more.
Yeah.
That's because they're doing something right to make you intrigued with that area. And that was the one thing too. The second act was like, all right, we're going here. Now we're going here. Now we're going here. Now we're going here. And third act, it was like, I wish we could have explored it just a little bit more. And I don't know how they're going to do a sequel with it, but
And I've heard the jokes like someone was just like, watch them make a Disney Plus show about the baby and the
yeah.
three monkeys, and like have it
Oh,
be like their penguins of Madagascar.
that show was great, by the way. That was one of my guilty pleasures. I was in college and I was like, give me some Penguins of Madagascar, give me some Phineas and Ferb. I don't care. It's a
Right.
guilty pleasure.
Hey, and the guy, oh man, is the one who voiced either Phineas or Ferb, like him on Twitter, like go find him because like his Twitter is great.
It's probably Phineas. Ferb said like three lines of a show, an episode. So,
But like the person behind it, yeah, I think it's Phineas. But what other movies have you been watching?
so I stumbled upon it. I don't know why, but I'm a sucker for like the young teen going through high school. I don't know why I still like those movies. I should have grown out of it. I'm 33, but for some reason I still like a good little like the guy finds the girl and it finds out about himself. Type of thing. And as long as there's most of the time, it's hard to find one that actually works and I don't cringe nowadays with it. But like to all the boys that I loved, I liked that first because the first movie, the second movie could not get through the third, just because it just felt like they were just. You can tell when they were just trying to cash a check, and it was just kind of like I can't finish it. I've tried twice, and I just couldn't. I picked up where I'm left off, and I'm just like, where you
The
just
third one is the worst of the three.
yeah.
But I like all three of them, and they definitely upped the budget of the third one.
Yes, they did. They definitely explored a lot. But the map of tiny perfect things. It's a Amazon Prime movie. There's a theme here. I've been spoiling a lot of. I hop around, so like I'll go like HBO Max. I'm probably going to be on HBO Max for a while. Like as soon as it came out, I was watching all the DC animated movies. I just went back and watched them because they're really good. But the map of tiny perfect things. You can find out through the trailer, so I'm not really spoiling anything. But it's a Groundhog Day based plot where this guy or like Palm Springs. It's not as good as Palm Springs. Palm Springs is great. I know Roku was griping that it should have been up for an Oscar. I'm like, I don't know what you would up it for, but still, it definitely was a. I went back and watched that, but it's Groundhog Day, so the kid is for some reason reliving, but it's already taken place where he's already been in this time loop forever, and it starts over at midnight. Doesn't matter where he's at, it immediately just sucks him back, and he starts over exactly the same way. And so like the whole time he's just like doing everything, and then he meets this girl who is going through the same. He can tell for some reason he's going through like he's using every single day to try and hook up with this girl at the beginning of it, and then he meets this other girl who ends up being going through the same loop. And so they just go through each part of the day, and that the map of tiny perfect things is because each day they both find like things that are just perfect, like they line up perfectly. Like a guy sitting on a park bench, and this bus comes by, and the angel wings like line up perfectly with his back, and it's just like, and so he makes a map of like every spot that perfect thing happens every single time that they're in that time loop. But they're going through it together, so it's kind of like a nice little mini date. But it was definitely a different spin on it. So it was definitely a cool way. It didn't get annoying. Now, was the character the acting the best? No, but and at the end of the day, it's just like, and how there was a little bit of a twist, not really. But it was definitely a different take, and it was really cool on how like what a perfect things that they found throughout. Excuse me. And So I mean, I would always, if you're into the, you know, your typical like high school youth finding themselves type of thing, and like him just avoiding, it was him just like he was kind of like your typical teenager. Like you didn't want to face your problems. You just kind of want to go through the same mundane, like let's keep going through the day every single day and not facing your issues. Let's just act like nothing's wrong when there's something was, and he just couldn't face it. And then meeting the girl, and then you realize she had it. She's got stuff going through because it's like they're teenagers and they have problems, but they don't want to address them, which we've seen before. But with the Groundhog Day thing going through, and then how it's shot, it never got slow, never got boring. It had my full attention the whole time. So I really enjoyed it, unlike the little things that we're going to talk about.
This sounds like well, I love those cutesy movies, and I've gotten even more into them now with quarantine. Like I'm just gonna put on a romance movie and like watch that. Or like with me, I don't even read romance books at all, but my sister-in-law is into them, and she's into like those romance movies. So she's like, "Oh, you need to read this book. You need to read this book," and she'll like, when she's done with it, she'll hand it over to me, and I'm like, now I'm reading all of these like little cute little romance stories.
Yeah,
And I was like, that this is what COVID 2020 now 2021 has done to me.
right. I mean, it's like that Bo Burnham. Like that's the thing with like those movies, and I try and put it on my roommate. She doesn't like them because she's just like, I don't know if maybe it's a sappy thing. I don't know if it, whatever it is. She doesn't care for any type of like, oh they find each other, they love each other at the end. I'm like, not necessarily every one. They've come up with a couple of them where they don't necessarily end up. I mean, that's why 500 Days of Summer and the
La La Land.
yeah, or Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. Like that was a deep dive into the hey, they don't end up, that type of spoiler alert. That was a huge deep dive into it. And I'm not going to say whether or not they end up together or anything at the end, but it's not just your typical beats of a movie to an extent. But it's definitely one that surprised me on how much the chances that it took. And it was definitely different. It did get a little like, okay, come on, let's wrap it up.
Right.
A little bit here and there, and then, but how, like, to me, it can come off as cheesy. It kind of come off as not, but like how everything like kind of connects at the end. But mainly the overarching thing is these two teens are stuck in the situation, but they're still just with any teen, they don't want to face reality. So it's them doing those type of things. So and it does kind of hit home a little bit. So I was surprised on how much, but I could also understand it's that type of movie. So if you're not into those things, I don't care how much of good of a story it is, but it's up there as far as like how surprising I liked it. Kind of like a romantic comedy with Definitely Maybe, the Ryan Reynolds one.
Yeah.
Like I was like, that was just different. And it took a little different spin on it, but just because it came out the same time that Palm Springs did, so it's like we got like two Groundhog Day style movies.
And
They're
one's
totally,
better than the other, yeah.
yeah, one's better than the other. So, but they're totally two different things.
Yeah.
Totally two different things.
And unfortunately, that happens a lot too, where like you have two things that people like advertise, and you're like, oh, this is the same thing, and then you actually like watch them, and you're like, it's not the same thing at all. Just because it has a little thing that's similar to the other thing doesn't make it the same. But that's
Right.
the way it's advertised, and it's just like, oh, come on, you're doing things disservice.
I know. And then I just kind of wrap up though. I don't really want to spend too much time on this. The little things with Denzel Washington, Rami Malek, Jared Leto. It starts off. It's your typical like murder mystery, and then it just does not get better. It just there. It was.
I'm
It
so
was.
glad I didn't waste my time watching this.
Like you have three like, and Rami Malek's like character development makes no sense whatsoever. The pacing's just off. Denzel's character, when you finally figure out, and then it's like a Coen Brothers film. It just kind of like, and like Jared Leto was great, by the way, but it's still just like it didn't make sense to me where it went, and I was just like, and one of my buddies was like, dude, it's one of the best movies I've ever seen. Well, he's also a police officer, so he's probably met some of these he can relate to it a little bit more. But to me, it just, as far as the storytelling goes and with the actors that you had, it started off and you're like, oh, okay, and then it just didn't go anywhere. And like a Coen Brothers film, it just, at the end of it, you're like, oh, so that happened. And so it just it did not yet. It, it's a good first act.
How do you have three Oscar winning actors who are like phenomenal actors, and then you make a movie that, like, I hear so much bad things about this movie from people.
Well, it's because it's a script that was written in the '90s, and it got passed around and passed around and passed around. And finally, the person that wrote the screenplay had to direct it to get it made, because no one wanted to make it because they probably read the script. It was like, wow, it's a really good first act. Cool.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's it. Like, it just doesn't go anywhere from that. There really isn't, and like I said, at the end of it, you're just like, to me, that's what a Coen Brothers film. Someone pointed that out to me. It was like a glass shattering, like when someone points something out that you never noticed. That was a Coen Brothers thing. It's like every Coen Brothers film, at the end of it, you just, at the end of most of their movies, you just look at your friend and go, so that happened. Like, it just ends. It really doesn't have a reason of why it happened or any type of lesson or anything like that. It just ended. It's kind of like No Country for Old Men. It just ended. Big Lebowski. It just ended. Like, really, Fargo. It just kind of ended. I mean, it doesn't. There's nothing wrapping up. It just kind of, it fades to black, and we're like,
you got the gif. You got the gif of it.
Yeah, you did. You had a good time, didn't you? Okay, fine. We're just going to end it now. So yeah, I don't want to spend too much time, but of the movies, you can pass on the little things. Unfortunately.
Well, I've heard a bunch about people not liking it, so this will be one that I will not be seeing for those who watch all the episodes of Soul Talk. But we'll go into my recent movies, and I have two. The first one I want to talk about is Coming to America.
It's like Too Fast, Too Furious. Hope it's better than that movie.
Although Sean, our fellow friend and former Soul Talk person here, made a really good point of that. It's called Coming to America, but it really should be called Coming to Africa, because most of the movies set in Africa, and they're only bookend the America part. And I was like, oh, if they use the Spanish titles, it makes sense. So the original Spanish title for the original movie is El Príncipe de Zamunda, which is the Prince of Zamunda. And then the title for the second movie is El Rey de Zamunda, which is the King of Zamunda. So that makes more sense of what's going on with this movie.
They really couldn't call it Picking Up My Kid in Zamunda. In America.
Picking Up My Kid in America, right?
They really could, that title doesn't have as good of a ring to it as Coming to America with the two in there.
I mean, there is some controversial issues, which, without spoiling, you can go visit the spoiler talk on the Pop Culture Universe. Myself, Aisha, a fellow friend of ours, and Sean, and talk about it, and Boggs talk about it at length, and kind of just like there is an issue at the beginning that I'm just like, they really had to do that. They couldn't find that. Okay, that's where we're going here.
I mean, the first movie had a dick washer and with her tits out. Like, I mean,
right. See,
I think compared to that, to what happened in this one, is it's not as bad. Maybe, I don't know. I've never seen it.
I'll let you know in post after. But so there's that, which kind of sets the tone off for the movie, and I still enjoyed the movie, and there was great cameos, and you got to see some of the old characters. The best parts was still in Queens for this movie for me. The barbershop. Yeah. Oh my God. Hilarious. And someone made a joke that those guys should be dead, but the barbershop apparently is a time vortex where that's all that exists.
I was getting ready for that, because I'm like, it's been how long? Shouldn't those old guys? And they haven't aged, quote unquote. Right. So
his mama calls him Kid.
Right.
Cassius, so I call him Cat. But and they're still talking sports. They're still eating the same soul food. They're still doing the same thing. So one of this joke too was in the trailer, so it's really not spoiling. But they were like, You haven't been paying child support for 30 years and now you come back? Boy, you an idiot.
Right.
Like,
Although
but
soul tasting soul food would be a great sub show for you to do.
I should do it.
The title makes itself.
Right. But and while watching Soul, Disney
Right.
Soul, Pixar Soul.
Soul food review
Yeah.
while watching Soul.
But I overall enjoyed it. It's like one of those like fun bad movies.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas like the first movie I think is a good movie. And I enjoy that movie. And I had fun with that movie. This movie I think is a bad movie, but it's still fun.
Right.
So it would be perfect for our trailer park trivia. Right. Inside jokes, sorry people. Yeah. But so I would say if you have Amazon Prime, definitely go watch it. I wouldn't get Amazon Prime just to watch it, and I wouldn't pay money to see it, if that makes sense. But I would see it again just because I own Amazon Prime.
Gotcha. All right.
That's where I'm at with coming to.
Well, I see it on there every single, because as you know, right now there's a theme. I've been on Amazon a lot, so every time I watch it, it's like the #1 movie in America. I'm like, how do you figure that out? But all right.
Yeah, apparently the amount of downloads that it got on its first day like broke some record, but you know they're always breaking records. So.
Oh yeah.
Right. The #1 movie in America doesn't mean anything anymore.
No.
Especially during these times.
Yeah, exactly.
But the next movie I have, it's a DC property. I have not read the comic for this, but I kind of want to go back and read it, and that's The Losers. And you see there, you got Zoe Saldana, you got Chris Evans, so you got your MCU actors in there, Idris Elba, and man, it's just a fun time. It's so you start off, you got these 5 guys, they're in the military, they're about to do this mission in Bolivia, and then something goes horribly wrong and they get stuck there in Bolivia. And then they partner up with Zoe Saldana's character to get back to the United States, but the way they make a deal. So she's like, I'll get you back to the US, but then you have to do this for me, kind of thing. And it's the person that made the things that went wrong for that mission is responsible, and the one that Zoe Saldana wants to go after. So it's kind of just that, like, there's a revenge plot. There's just that, like, Ocean's 11, CIA, military kind of like thing going on. There's weapons of mass destruction, like, so that type of movie is
it's Ocean's 11 meets, you know, just Doomsday, just like, or James Bond. So it's like Ocean's 11 meets James Bond type of thing is what you're telling me.
Exactly. Definitely.
Yeah.
And then oh my God, Chris Evans' character is so funny in this. Like, he had a moment where he goes, you know that dogs can, he's the fun facts guy. He goes, you know that dogs can only make 10 types of sounds, but cats can make over 1,000? He's like, cats can't trust them, while he's practicing on a golf swing. And like, and the guy next to him is like, don't ever say that again. Like,
right.
And he's just like the awkward fun facts, like, I'm just gonna be weird like character, and it's so funny. So his character name is Jensen. He's comms and tech. And you have Cougar, who's the long range eliminations, and so he's the guy that like is always looking at stuff through a scope.
Right.
And then there's like a moment where he's in another building and he's kind of like able to like hit his target all the time. He's like a dead shot. You got Pooch, which is the transpo and heavy weapons. So he's always the like, I'll drive.
Right.
And Rogue, who's the demo and tactical, and then Clay, who's the operations control. He's the leader of the losers. And so they each have their role, kind of thing.
Idris Elba is, that was a Schmodown question too, I think. Idris Elba is the leader, right?
No, he's Rogue. He's the demo and tactical.
Okay, because I remember that's how Shazam won, is they got that question and Bibbs pulled it. So it was Idris Elba was the answer. So that's a
Idris Alba.
Idris Elba. I forget his Idris
Yeah,
Alba, and they put A
I
instead of E.
love Greg Alba. Now his name is Greg Idris Alba.
Right.
I
Because yeah,
like
they
him.
put Alba in there, and I think Greg was just like, "Oh, I didn't know he was kidding to me."
Right.
Hmm.
But it's a fun movie. Zoe Saldana is great in it. Chris Evans is great in it. Idris Elba, there's a little twist with his character going on,
Hmm.
but it's another one of him just doing an American accent because he's
But I remember that's the reason he got. They didn't even realize that he was from Britain when he got the because he was on Hot Ones, and I remember him telling that story. Is he got the role of The Wire, and he never even had a. He just went in there with the American accent the whole time. So they thought he was from like a Boston, New York area, and then they didn't realize he had such a good American
what's
accent.
up, chaps?
Yeah, and they started talking. They're like, "Wait a minute, when did this happen?" Like, yeah, that's how I am. So,
He
yeah.
does a really good American accent. He's also in the one of my favorite Christmas movies, This Christmas, and American accent there. And then you watch the interviews, and he's with his British accent. It's just like another one of those Brits that you don't realize is British. Like Christian Bale was like that for me
Oh
as
yeah.
well. I didn't know that he was British until like after the fact, and I was like, "Whoa, wait, what?"
Yeah, I remember him going for like when Batman Begins came out and he got won the award, some MTV Movie Award. He goes
Yeah,
up there and starts talking with like a British, Scottish, some type of accent. I was like,
yeah,
wait, did I miss a day in school somewhere where no one told me that? Because the only thing you see him in is American Psycho, Equilibrium. Like you've never seen him in a
yeah.
where he's doing a British accent
Until
until
Ford versus Ferrari.
until Ford
Yeah.
versus Ferrari, and then you're like, man, he does a really good British accent. Because you forget that that's his actual like dialect. That's his actual accent. So, but yeah, Losers sounds like right up my alley. Every time it's one of those things where it's like
It's on HBO Max right now.
it's in my queue, and I just never get around to watching it. Meanwhile, I watched Six Underground, which is kind of the same thing with Ryan Reynolds. Because anything Ryan Reynolds is in, I'm gonna watch. I know it has
Yeah,
no
still haven't
relation to
seen that
Deadpool.
one.
Yeah, it's everything to do with Deadpool. But he was always funny anyway, and like Van Wilder and all this, whatnot. But I try to watch it. It was a Michael Bay film. Not to kind of go on, but I couldn't get through it. It literally has no plot. It's just like, all right, we're gonna go to this location, blow stuff up. We're gonna go to this location, blow stuff up. Like it was just like it was Michael Bay's wet dream. It's like I don't want any plot. I'm gonna put actors like with
Explosives.
I want big muscles and women in ridiculously sexy clothing and explosions. It was just like and with no plot. It was like Michael Bay's wet dream.
I'm
So
sure a
yeah,
lot of people are like, sounds like a good time to me.
yeah, action scene. Like yeah, I mean sometimes people just want to. What
Yeah.
I need a little bit more substance. I'm sorry.
See, with me, I was just like, Six Underground seems like the movie that I would want to see like in theaters,
Hmm.
not on at home on Netflix. Because I'm like, if I'm gonna watch a mind-numbingly no plot things blowing up movie, I want to see it in the theater on the big screen.
Yeah, I want to feel the rumble of the bass of all the explosions. Which is
Right.
probably why Transformers One was a lot better than I would think it actually is, because it was a fun movie.
Yeah,
Um,
I saw that in theaters and I was like, I liked this. And then when I saw it
yeah,
at home, I was like, not as good.
no, not as good. Soundtrack's good though.
Yeah.
But anyway, but
But
yeah, I need
we'll
to.
go into our anything extra, which we got some video games to talk about. We got some sports to talk about. So if you want to go into the video games you're playing.
So yeah, so the video games I've been playing. I started the third of the new trilogy of the Tomb Raider series, Lara Croft. I think it's Shadows of the Tomb Raider. I believe so. Where she is basically going. She still is. Yeah, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. So she is in more of a Venezuela, South America place, and it's more of the same of the first two games, unfortunately. Where
Oh, yeah.
and I also got us on a Steam sale, so I got all like a lot of the downloadable content. So it's a lot of the RPG elements kind of went to the wayside because I already started off with all this extra gear. And it just kind of takes away from the experience of you building yourself up and getting what you need as far as gear wise. And then a lot of the exploration, it just, I'm one of those completionist people, and other than the tombs were pretty straightforward. The puzzles weren't that great. Um, so it just, and the story was okay, but it felt like more of the same from the first two games that I got. So I never actually completed it. But graphically, great play game. And then a lot of times it's like they want you to be stealthy, but the AI is really not that good either. So the only time I die is because I fall into a pit or something like that. Like I really, it's just not as challenging as I liked it to be. So I wish I could sit there and give it a great review, but the repetition, there wasn't enough difference. From
Mm-hmm.
what they like, literally the only difference is like she covers herself in mud and then she can go up against a wall and sneak around in foliage. Like that's the big difference. Like there's really other difference between the first two games. The first two games, like there was enough growth, and enough things added to where it made sense. Where this one, it was more the same, and nothing. And like even the characters, like I didn't buy into it. But you can tell they really put a lot of effort into it as far as the setting and the graphics and all that. It just didn't do anything for me. Borderlands 3. Borderlands is one of my top three series of all time. Borderlands 2, I could never get enough of, from the writing to from the gameplay to everything. And Borderlands 3, we had Borderlands the pre-sequel, and that was made by a different studio. It was made by a studio in Australia. So like 90% of the characters they introduced were Australian accents. So that was kind of interesting. But the thing was, it was a whole lot of nothing. Like the world was like there's this big wide open space, but there was nothing in it.
Mm-hmm.
Borderlands 3, the new characters they introduced, this one has over 1 billion guns, so it has different little combination of guns. That's kind of their thing. Is like you can, and they're goofy, and then the dialogue is goofy. But there was like in Borderlands 2, like one of the DLCs, there's this 13-year-old named Tiny Tina, and she's like the boom booms make the badonkadonks. I don't know why. It's corny over the top, but it's a 13-year-old. Um, and then like one of the DLCs is like you in a D&D game that Tiny Tina has created. And it was just really cool like that. And where Borderlands 3, the writing kind of fell off a little bit, but it was still fun. It's still Borderlands. There was still enough there, and the content was good. And I still go back, but like once you beat it, there's really not much replayability in it as much as you would want.
Just go
Um,
back to Borderlands 2.
yeah, just kind of go back to Borderlands 2. Now, don't sit there and say I haven't put enough hours into it. And then like it's also fun. It's also better with friends. So we have like there's 4 of us that all kind of play it, and we've gone through all DLCs. Like I think, and the good thing about playing games on PC is it lets you know how many hours you spent on one game. And I think I'm up to like 6 days worth
Oh,
of
wow.
gameplay on Borderlands 3. And then yeah, so I mean like it's Borderlands. If you like Borderlands, you're gonna like Borderlands 3. Like it's just the guns are great. Um, the combinations of what you can do and like how the guns are, like you like to reload, you like throw this gun and it becomes a mini turret, and it's just like, or it's just it's just goofy guns where like there was one gun that shot like unicorns and like explosive unicorns and stuff like that, or that has homing missiles. Um, and
What
they're
optic is the shooting at? Like, is it first person?
first
Is it
person.
first
It's
person?
first
Okay.
person shooter, and like each person has their own character tree that you can, as you level up, it creates more abilities. So like one guy is a beast master, where you have like a little pet, like a dog, and like or a little monkey that carries around a gun. They're called different things, and it's like a little crab that like can hit, but they can like pick you up. The other person is what they call like they have like kinetic power, so they have different arms, so they can like lift people up and like freeze them. This other guy is like super fast, so he's like a weapons expert. And I forget the other. Oh, and this other girl, like this little bitty girl, she has like her own mech, and then like the other character can come on and like be on the back and like run a turret as she has the mech, but it's like your special ability. Um, and so they each have like different little quirks that they do to like help you with critical. And like towards the end, once you get to the end game, it becomes more of a math problem. It's like, how can I build my tree to get the best stats? And like, there's it definitely is its own community for sure. But once it became math instead of just like, hey, let's just go and shoot stuff, it just became I don't know, it just became mundane at that point. But that's in game stuff.
And just imagine someone's just like, I'm not good at math. Screw this.
Right, right. No, I don't. I'm not putting it up, but like, no, it's super fun to play with friends. It's the slide mechanic, the kip up mechanic, as far as like just bring like
Is
this
it
is the
still
first.
fun to play with someone who's really bad at shooting games? Because
Yeah,
that's me.
yeah.
I was when I had a PS3 for a hot second in college. There was the Deadpool game, and
Mm-hmm.
anytime he had to shoot, it was a one-person game. Anytime he had to shoot, I gave the controller to my friend because she was good at the shooting. And anytime he had to go after people with his swords, then I played because I was good at the hack and slash.
Yeah,
Kind
fun
of
with
like,
friends.
yeah, so I was just like, we were passing the controller back and forth. I was like, oh shit, we got to shoot that guy over there. Here you go, Lauren. Like, go get him.
Yeah,
Oh, now they're
exactly.
coming near us. Hand it back to me.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, it because I mean, I'm talking to our mutual friend Cheryl. She was playing Borderlands 2, and you don't have to be the best at it, but it's just so good with friends, especially when one's a different character and all that. So there's different strategy involved, and like how okay, this gun works better for this character based off of how your tree is done. So I mean, it definitely has a lot of combinations and things you can do to really get. And there's puzzles in it, and it's a fast pace. It's all over the place, but it's what they call PVE. So it's a person versus the environment. It's not you versus another player. So and the worlds that they build are very well done. It's still goofy all over, and super over the top. It's not just some kiddie game. I mean, there's a lot. It's blood and people, and it's got like a Mad Max. It's always the Mad Max style vibe. It's a post-apocalyptic style world. So like, there's just a bunch of like what they call psychos and stuff like that. So just a bunch of people around trying to, but that's just the lifestyle. That's kind of the culture and the world that they presented is like, well, this is kind of like an everyday thing that people are just going around just shooting people type of thing. But it's the art style is really cool. I forget exactly how they call what they frame it as, but it's definitely got its own art style. But yeah, obviously I can sit there and be like, well, that's just because I played it so much, and we're waiting for more content to come out because I'm still going to be playing it. So like, we're still like getting updates and stuff. So I still have a heck of a lot of fun with it. But I mean, compared to Borderlands 2, Borderlands 2 is one of the best games ever. Just like a masterpiece from like writing to gameplay to just overall experience. I go back and play. We go back and every once in a while just play that game. So I mean, compared to that, but you're comparing things to something that was pretty much borderline perfect. So
Yeah.
it's just hard to match that. But to sit there and say that I like Borderlands 3 way better than Borderlands 1. I thought Borderlands 1 was pretty okay, but the gunplay and the different combinations you can do with Borderlands 3.
So is it even though you're saying Borderlands 3 is better than one, I'm thinking like the Godfather like comparison where it's like the second movie is better than the first movie, even though the first movie is phenomenal. It
Right.
would be the reverse. It'd be like if Borderlands 1 is Godfather 3, and then Borderlands 2 is Godfather 2, and then Borderlands 3 is Godfather 1. It's like the way it is in my head.
Yeah, I guess you can put it that way, but I mean, Borderlands 1's better than Godfather 3. Um, so it's more. I would put it more like the Back to the Future series. Okay,
Okay.
so Borderlands 1's more like Back to the Future 3. Back to the Future 2 is Borderlands 3, and then Borderlands 1 is Borderlands 2. So it's like you still enjoy all three movies,
Yeah.
but one is clearly just like just it
It,
impacted pop
yeah.
culture. It's just there. I mean, it's just like something like you can go back and just like watch it all over again. But you really don't. You still have a fun with 1 and 2 of Back to the Future, but I mean 2 and 3, but it's you really don't. I really don't revisit 3 as much as I revisit 2. And I know it's vice versa. Some people as far
I
as
still haven't seen 3.
yeah. So I mean, I know some people really like 3 more than 2, um, but that's just kind of how I compare it. I would definitely put 3 over as far as Borderlands 3 over Borderlands 1, but um, Borderlands 2 is chef's kiss type of game. So to sit there and say it's not as good as Borderlands 2, there's a lot of games that are not as good as Borderlands 2. They're people's favorite games, just to me. And then Gunfire Reborn, it is talk about indie. So Gunfire Reborn is an indie game that was released um, like it's like within the year. It's pretty young. But basically just paid like $15 and it's what they call a roguelike. So a roguelike game. Rogue light. It's Lite and then rogue like the X-Men character. And so you would basically start off at the beginning and you start off with like a mundane like gun or weapon. And each they have like three characters and they like a cat, a dog, and a bird, but they all have like their different little powers and stuff. And you can play up to two, you and two of your friends. And it starts off like, and each map is different, but once you die, you start from the beginning. Okay,
Oh,
so you can beat the whole game, and then through beating the whole game, you level up and your skill tree goes up. But you're still like, but each time you play through it, the maps are like each room's going to be structured differently. So it's not like going through exactly the same, and how the enemies are coming out and stuff. So it's very random generated each time you go through it, but you don't, and you still get your experience for when you die. But the further you go through the game, the more experience you gain, and then you eventually build up your whole skill tree. And then, but but unlike most of these type of like indie games, where like once they release more content, microtransactions, you pay $15, you're good to go. So we're just
oh,
waiting for
that's
more content
nice.
now. So they keep adding more bosses, more levels, more guns, more, and what they call scrolls. So as you collect scrolls, it tacks onto your character, and so each time your character build is totally different than when the other playthrough. So sometimes you might just have a bad roll and you might not get as far in it just because your scrolls and your guns are not you just didn't get the good guns that you have, because each gun, even though it's the same thing, might have a different layout. So it's what they call a roll, or like we call like a dice roll. Like just sometimes
Yeah, I
the
was gonna
rolls.
be like, is it like when you roll, like if you're playing like a D&D game or something where you're like, you roll and you always hope to get 20, but you
Right.
don't, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Is it one of those kind of things?
Yeah. It's like something,
Okay.
one of those type of things. Like sometimes you just got to roll with the punches in that
Yeah.
regard. But it's like
You're
it
like,
took
oh,
us.
I got 4 for stealth. Like, I'm not gonna try to be stealthy, kind of thing. Yeah, like,
Yeah, exactly. So sometimes you have to make your character a little bit differently each time.
yeah,
But it's still, especially when you're playing with two friends, like you end up, next thing you know, you're like, oh my gosh, I played this thing forever, and like in doing a sync. But the more people you have, and the same thing with Borderlands, the more people you have playing with you, the more enemies pop up, or the more the health they have. So the game generates, difficulty based. So it's not like you need three people and then you can just run through the game. As far as
yeah,
first, if there's just you, there's not as many enemies that pop up on screen. And then so you can sometimes you can run through the whole thing so you can still run through the whole thing by yourself, and you don't need two people, but it's fun with friends. So we're just waiting for more content to come out for that, to
I
really
like
jump
too
up
that
on.
they're not making it that you have to spend more money to be
Right.
better. Because those games are the ones that like I steer clear. I'm like, if I have to, when I pay for a game, I just want to pay for it and then that be it. I don't want to have to pay more money to be able to finish a game. I don't want to have to pay more money to be able to be good at a game. I want to be able to pay the original price and then have the gameplay make me better, not have to money make me better.
Exactly. Yeah, it's what they call pay to win.
Mhm.
It's basically what they called it. We always steer clear of microtransactions. That was why we kind of stayed away from Gunfire Reborns, because we figured it's one of those typical indie games where you'd have to pay money to get better, or Candy Crush style way of doing things, or like even to a quote unquote like a Fortnite or something like that, where people
Yeah.
invest a lot of money in skins and stuff. You don't have to invest that, or like the things that you invest in is just like something that's mundane. It has nothing to do with the gameplay or
Yeah.
affects the gameplay, at least what I've seen. And as much, and you really and it's kind of like you want to play it because they presented a very good gameplay and a very in-depth gameplay for what it is. And but on top of that, it's an indie developer, so it's not like a huge AAA game. It's not like God of War, which is still the best game I ever played in my life. But so you don't have like a team of over 100 people working on this game. It's just like Dale and his friend Joe decide that are really good at building at producing video games that or video game developers that are just really good. And they come out with those. So a lot of times when you find a really good indie game, you really understand, like, man, how can you make something so good with such a small little conglomerate of people? So you kind of tip your cap to that. But I mean, it's the best. I think it was like $10 or $15. I mean, it's the best $10, $15, $50 I've spent that I can remember on a video game for as much content that I'm going to get, much less
Yeah.
that I've already experienced. And I think I put, let me bring that up. I think I
Hey, if
put,
you're spending $15 and you're getting enough gameplay out of it and you're having a lot of fun, well worth it. I'm
yeah,
gonna add this to my list.
yeah,
When I eventually, because I want to get back into gaming, I've been thinking back and forth between either getting a new PC and doing PC gaming or getting, whenever I'm able to, getting like a PS5.
gotcha. Yeah, so I put in 46 hours into that game.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, little indie game that I put 46 hours in because of the replayability was ridiculous. Like we've run through the game I don't know how many times, but there was like they released a gun. All right, let's go through, and then you still have to do they have to kill certain things a certain way to unlock certain weapons. So it's like, okay, let's like unlock certain scrolls. So it's like it still rewards you for playing it multiple times. So
That's
and
good.
it's good gameplay on top of it. So it's not like you're not buying these things. You have to play the game and do certain tasks
Right.
in order to achieve it. So
Which is the way it should be.
yeah, exactly. And it's that positive reinforcement that just keeps bringing you back more and more. Next thing you know, it's like
And now you're spending hours and hours.
yeah, now you're spending hours and hours, but no regrets,
No regrets.
no regrets.
All right, now we're going to get into a little sports talk, which we haven't done yet on Soul Talk, which is weird because I am a massive sports fan. Although we're getting into football talk, which I will be. I'm a fair weather football fan. I don't really like football's not my biggest kind of thing that I follow. I'm more of basketball and baseball, which I can't wait for baseball. It's coming. But we have a massive sports fan here with us.
Oh, massive! I
So
would. That's putting it lightly, I guess.
so we're gonna go into, like I say, in our anything extra, we can go into anything that our guest hearts desire. So we're gonna go into some sports.
All
So
right, so hopefully all of your listeners are like, "Gosh, dang it, I hate listening. You became a bro real quick."
hey,
So
I love to bro out, so we're broing out on Soul
yeah,
Talk.
that's what we're doing. But yeah, no. When I was growing, I've told this story just to you many times, and I always say it's like when it comes to sports, I don't know how I caught the bug. I don't know when I caught the bug, but when I was growing up, instead of watching, I did watch Sesame Street, but most of the time I was watching Sports Center. I was watching the Stuart Scotts, Rich Eisens, Dan Patrick's, Chris Berman's of the world, and just knowing stats and just get. I don't know. I ran. I ran when the Bulls 1991 team won the NBA championship. My parents bought the VHS of their like little documentary of that season, and I wore that tape out. Like, I mean, that's what I watched as a young kid. I was just sports bloopers, football follies. And then as I got older, I got entrenched to it more, not to the gambling side of it. Basically, fantasy football is about as far as it gets as far as sports gambling. But I don't get into the gambling side of it. I do, like, being from Kentucky and being from Louisville, Kentucky, I do horse racing a lot. It's in my blood. But as my dad always says, when it comes to gambling, gambling money has no home. So you better don't bet your house, that whole thing. But once you get that positive reinforcement, it's kind of tough to go back. It's not the fact that I know, I'm going to get addicted to sports gambling. I'm 33. I've never been addicted to sports gambling. I've won many bets in my life, and I'm very well off. So I know it's not that thing. But I know I just went on a diatribe there, but kind of like my background in it. Yeah, I just like sports. And a lot of times when someone says sports, my little radar goes off. I'm like, hey, let's talk about this. And they're like, man, a lot of in-depth crap. I'm like, yeah, I don't know why I remember it, but I do.
Yeah, whenever I want to know a little bit more in depth, I'm like, hey, Josh, who's doing the? Oh, perfect. He has the answer immediately. Like, he has the answer to every question I have. I think the only person that knows a little bit more on a certain sport is my father. My father knows everything there is to know about baseball. So whenever I have a question, I'm like, hey, Dad. So baseball, I'll go to Dad, but every other sport, I'll go to Josh.
Baseball, so when it comes to like my knowledge of just like recalling, 90s baseball I'm pretty good with. Everything else after that, I like baseball. I keep up with it. It's still a sport that is statistically, if you're a stats nerd, it's the best thing ever. So that's why I love baseball movies. Because of just, I don't know,
I
just
still loved Moneyball.
oh, that's one of my, just, I go back and watch all the
So
time.
good.
It's so good.
So
Again, Aaron Sorkin. Um,
good.
so yeah, I love Moneyball. And then but yeah, that's the '90s. I was big into like, I like baseball. I was good at baseball, and then I got hit with the ball, and I was like, nah, I'm good. So I played soccer most of the time. And then I'm a stick, so there's no way I was playing football. But even though football and basketball are my two favorite, and then it goes baseball and then hockey, just because I'm from Louisville. If there's an ice
Hey, but
rink.
you're now in Nashville, so you can go to some
Yeah,
Preds games.
and it is a hockey town. Nashville is a hockey town. It's kind of crazy, but yeah, I know we have the Titans here, but people care more about the Preds than they do about anything else. They get crazy for the Preds here.
Sure, for sure. As
And
someone who used to live in Nashville, it's
yeah,
definitely way more a hockey town.
yeah,
But let's go into these NFL pickups. So
I know a lot of them.
the first one we have Russell Wilson.
Russell
So
Wilson. So just to kind of go into good old Russell Wilson, our boy Jay Washington. He's a Chicago Bears fan. He wanted everybody but the guy they just got, which is Andy Dalton, the fireman, fire truck, fire. I don't know. He's redheaded. So how you want to call it, and how you want to call him, get all the nicknames. But Russell Wilson came out to Seattle. I guess there were some rumblings between him and their head coach Pete Carroll, and he decided that, you know what, I kind of want to explore my options. I want to put a feel out there. So whether it was his agent or whatnot, or being like, hey, you need to treat Russell with more respect within the organization. So they came out and said, hey, I want to play for, if I was going to get traded, I'm good at Seattle, but if I was going to get traded, I'll go to one of these four teams, which was the Saints, Dallas, Chicago, and I forget the other one.
what was the fourth one?
I forget who the fourth one was, but mainly the Saints were talked about.
Was it Miami?
I don't think it was Miami. That's
I don't
Deshaun
think
Watson.
that's
Deshaun Watson.
Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson was like, I want to go to Miami, and I was like,
I
we
don't know
have two.
Miami or the Jets. That was like
Yeah.
the two landing spots, which neither one of those football players are going to, or as it stands right now, with all the offseason moves that we're getting into. Chicago just spent way too much money for Andy Dalton. So, and they played a very strong play according to Twitter. So you can take it for life granted, but grant us all if you want to. But they gave as much, they turned everything they possibly could, and Seattle just like, no, we're not getting rid of Russell Wilson. They're just not doing it. So, and with Deshaun Watson, they made a strong play for Deshaun Watson, didn't get him. So when the play happened, our boy kind of made the joke with Soul that, as soon as that happened, I was like, you hear that? The sound of Jay Washington breaking something. Because he really wanted Tyrod Taylor, who signed a deal with Houston, of all places. And so I know that he was just like, you couldn't, he wanted Tyrod Taylor. And it just depends on, it's a coaching staff and a GM move on that. I think Tyrod's fine. But he has the worst luck of any quarterback going right now. He goes to Cleveland, and he gets his hand broke. He gets has a small injury, and within like 2 games in, and next thing you know, Baker Mayfield steps in. Then he goes to San Diego, or LA now technically.
Yeah.
And the doctor decides to puncture his lung with a needle, giving him a cortisone shot. And then Justin Herbert steps in, and he's awesome. So it's just like, he's had the worst luck ever, and he
just needs to go to teams so that way the backup quarterback can be good.
Right. And so, but he really wanted Tyrod. I understand Tyrod hasn't gotten like a fair shake, but I don't think Tyrod is a quarterback to, take you to the promised land. I don't think Andy Dalton is either, especially so, at that point, if I have to choose between Tyrod and Andy, I'd take Tyrod. So I definitely understand that situation. But if I was the GM, I guess they gave a good shot and they gave everything they could, but they probably offered the farm to him. And the way it sounded, they offered the farm to Houston, and they offered the farm to Seattle. And none of those two organizations. Now I don't know if that's coming from Chicago's. It just depends on what side it's actually coming from that information, and whether or not it's confirmed. Maybe as the days leading forward, we'll find out more. But as far as we know, of the teams that Russell Wilson put down, the Cowboys are staying put with Dak. They paid Dak a lot of money, but he deserved all that money. He was on trajectory, just his ankle.
Even after his injury, because he still deserves it.
He still deserves that money as a Dallas fan. Now, can we pay anybody else? I don't know, but he deserves that money. And then the Saints just now there's something called a voided contract, which is what they did with Taysom Hill over the Saints. It's kind of weird. So they can like void their contract each year. I don't understand how that works or how a player would even agree to it. There's no really guaranteed money. Like they have to finish out the season or they can void the contract to help with their salary cap because the salary cap is diminished. So
it's one of those loopholes to make
right.
sure that you don't have to deal with the salary cap.
Again, but the player agreed to it. He couldn't turn down that money. That's again, that kind of goes into a lot of times where like with the women's soccer team, when they sued saying they should be, which I agree with, they should get paid as much as the men because they bring in more eyes.
They should get paid more because they've won 4 world championships.
Right, I agree with that. Yeah, and I agree with that. But based off their contracts, they sign those contracts that they're getting paid X amount of money. So it's like, yes, we understand that. So figure it out with the next contract negotiations. Yeah. And if you can't come to a deal, then you don't play. That's just the business side of it. But that's what I'm saying is he still agreed to that contract. So, and they agreed to those contracts. So, like, that's what I understand. Like, in the court of law, yes, I agree the girls should be paid more than the men. Contractually, they have no leg to stand on because they signed those contracts.
Right.
So that's just kind of part of it there. So
that's more of a social issue than a legal issue because legally there's nothing they can do about it.
Yes. So, and the kind of same thing with Venus was going with the women getting paid as much as the men in tennis. They finally got that there, but that's more of a social thing. And they finally got there once they could do so. It's kind of like anytime a lockout or anything like that, right? So, and then they signed Jameis Winston as well. They signed him a 1-year deal, but obviously they've decided, okay, we're not going to go for Russell as well. So Russell Wilson looks like he's staying put. Deshaun Watson looks like he's staying in jail or whatever you want to call it in his situation. And it's, I don't know what they're doing with that Deshaun Watson situation. Meanwhile, and
he's just dreaming about Miami, like just like there, like with tears going down his eyes.
And Miami is probably going to either Miami's going to go full Tua. They have to at this point.
Which speaking of that, we can go into Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, because Fitzpatrick.
That's the next
time with Washington football team, which I think is solid for them. That's the thing is when you have as good of, and that's why with Chicago, I was cool with the Tyrod Taylor signing. If you couldn't get a stud in Deshaun or anything like that, because I like the Tyrod Taylor situation. Maybe it's just Andy Dalton fit what Matt Nagy wanted. I don't know with that, but again, Andy Dalton is a solid enough quarterback that if you have a solid defense, which Washington has, all you need to have is just a competent quarterback to score enough points to let your defense take over. That's all you have to have is a competent quarterback, and that's unfortunately Taylor Heineke. I forgot his first. I'm sorry if I'm.
Yeah, I always just call him Heineke.
Heineke. I mean, but he gave Tampa Bay the run of their season, much less, obviously they still had, but like Washington, they showed that they belonged as far as defensively with the rest of the NFL. They just needed that extra offensive.
They had that playoff push too, where like that happens to athletes that regular season, they're okay. And then they're like, oh, I'm in the playoffs. We made it there. I need to actually step up my game. And so there was that playoff push as well.
Right, exactly. And so they could have made some, because a lot of my buddies, we were predicting that Washington could beat them based off the fact of their defense wasn't there yet with Tampa, a lot like they were towards the end of the season when everybody got healthy. That was another thing is people don't talk about is Tampa wasn't healthy until their end where they got their big D tackle in with Sue to really let Shaq Barrett just do whatever the heck he wanted.
And their defense definitely helped them with that Super Bowl win.
Yes, they did. And so that's the thing is Washington is a competent quarterback away. Same thing with Chicago. That defense is there. So they're just a competent quarterback away from really making maybe a possible push to beat the Packers and beat the Bucks, because the Bucks are reassuring everybody. They're in the talks right now because they just got Shaq Barrett, which was the biggest thing. He made a little bit of pay cut, but sometimes players do that because they just want to they like winning. So
and they re-signed Gronk.
Yeah, they re-signed Gronk, and then they've been talking with Sue, Antonio Brown, and Leonard Fournette. Now, whether or not that's extensions or what, I don't know if they're free agents. I think Brown and Sue are. I don't know if Leonard Fournette. I don't know if they just took over his contract, but he got released. So
And
they probably
Antonio Brown has been behaving.
that we know of. I don't know where they're making sure, but I'm pretty sure Tom Brady basically was like, "Look, I put my neck out for you. You are." He probably had security with him at all times, and he had the Brady security. Was like,
I
"You."
wonder if he had him staying at his house like Gronk stayed with him. I wonder if he's like, "You're living with me now."
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It's just that just kind of puts just the upper echelon of what. It's kind of like that Jordan where he went to Vegas to get Dennis Rodman during the season. It was like, all right, he's like, as soon as, all right,
Sober on up. Come on, let's go.
yeah, come on. Yeah, so true story on that. That's crazy. That was a great documentary. But yeah, so they're still talking with Brown and Sue. So it looks like Tampa Bay is all going to basically be back. It just depends on how much more Sue's got in the tank for that regard. But it doesn't, like, most of the time once you win the Super Bowl, you lose everybody. There's time, especially for free agents, like, all right, I got my Super Bowl ring, now I'm going to get paid.
Yeah.
But the thing is, what it is now is, even when you're taking a sub decent contract, you're still getting. I think Shaq Barrett's was like $60-something million or 37. I mean, it's just like, even the decent contract is ridiculous amounts of money. But
And they might want to also, like, you don't always get the chance to like play with someone like Tom Brady.
right,
So that probably plays a factor into it as well. As us like, I'm gonna stay here as long as Tom Brady's staying here.
right, exactly. And Tom did he's going to play till he might be a robot, and I think he's still going to be playing. There was a funny joke kind of going around of, like, before Trump lost the election, but somehow knows, like, Trump's in his 7th term, Brady's playing for his 76th Super Bowl, and Philip Rivers just had his 200th kid. Like, it's just like they were just like
That reminds me of there's this video meme that was on YouTube that was hilarious after, and it was saying that the Warriors and the Cavs were going to continue being in the finals till the end of the earth, because it was before LeBron left for the Lakers. And so it was just this funny thing of, like, it's LeBron 2, LeBron 3000, LeBron, like,
right.
They all became like cyborgs, and they were still in the battle for the finals.
Exactly. So, but yeah, it's been a wild off season in free agency for the past 48 hours. I mean, it's just been nuts, and especially the Patriots.
Yeah.
So with the Patriots, with old Bill Belichick, he is doing. They used to call it the Patriot way, where they would just build through the draft and just get players through the draft. And Packers kind of do that. They really don't do much in free agency, even though they did just sign Aaron Jones. But basically the biggest free agency pickup that Green Bay has ever had is Reggie White. They haven't really gone out and got a stud somewhere. They only pay high money. And plus they really don't have the money to do so, being the only publicly traded team. There's no sole owner. The fans own the team, basically, and then they have a front office and they elect a GM from there. So they do have stockholders. Which is just, the Green Bay is just a cool little, just all around, it's just awesome. If you ever have a chance, please go to Green Bay and see a game.
And my friend who's a Packers fan, she owns stock, and she's like, and so she thinks like that it's so cool. She's like, I own stock in my favorite team.
Right, exactly. My dad owns a share of the Packers too, and he has a little thing that's framed and everything. But most of the time, it's the Patriot way. This time, there's like, nope, we're spending all the money, we're getting all these guys shored up. And then I've got it here from everybody that they've got. So they acquired, they re-signed Cam Newton, got Matthew Judon from the Ravens, got Hunter Henry, which is a tight end, from the Chargers, Jonnu Smith from the Titans, Nelson Aguilar from the Raiders was a wide receiver, Kendrick Bourne, Devon Gachu, Jalen Mills from the Eagles, Henry Anderson. They re-signed Wise. And then they're getting Dante Hightower and Patrick Chung back because they opted out. So next thing you know, they've basically gone from hopefully they can be a 500 team to there could be a 10, 11 win season out of these guys. And this is basically
they went and got everyone and their mother.
Right, they went and got everyone and their mother. And they actually, like, because the salary cap's going to increase, right? It's decreasing this year, but once that TV deal hits, it's another thing. Is people don't talk about this TV deal that's coming through. The salary cap's going to increase to where these are good deals for the team. But the thing is, this is what it tells me is what it kind of shows is that this is Bill Belichick's last hurrah. He's got like maybe 2 or 3 years left in him, so he's just throwing he's going after everything. He's not going to try and build anymore. He's already
Tom won one without me. Now I need to go win one without him.
right. He's got his mansion built. Now he's just refurnishing it with upgraded parts. Like he's not going to build a new house, from scratch again. He's not going to just add a layer to it. He's already got the house, the structure, everything is built. Now he's just adding new wallpaper and stuff at this point.
Do you think if he gets another ring that he's going to retire?
You can never say that. If it depends on one of the biggest things the famous coach Bear Bryant said to Joe Pa is his biggest regret is he didn't find a hobby. Because if you notice some of these coaches, once they stop coaching, they pass away pretty quickly. Now, Paterno, that's a different situation, but Bear Bryant happened the same way. The guy from Ohio State, Woody, after he retired, he didn't last very long there either. And that's the only thing is with Bill Belichick. Like, I hope he has a hobby. I hope he likes fishing or something like that. Because, once you're done coaching, that's all it's just like, I don't know what to do anymore. So you're just kind of sitting there looking at the wall, and you just go over old game film, and then it's kind of like a weird broken heart thing. But it's kind of shown that before in the past. So that's a lot of times when these like lifelong coaches retire and you don't know them of being like a golfer or whatever, just picking up some type of hobby to do afterwards. That's the thing with like Bo Jackson. Now he takes up, he's big into bow and arrows, archery, because they picked up a hobby.
Hopefully he has a hobby that we just don't know about and that he can do whenever he does retire in the future.
Yeah. So hopefully not. The Patriots are going all in. It's going to be interesting. It's kind of crazy that the NBA is really good at having no off season technically, because there's always moving parts around, but the NFL is catching right back up to where, we're here well into March, which we should be talking March Madness and everything. And we're still, most of our sports shows and stuff that we watch now is still overtaken by, oh, this guy's going here and this guy's going there, and how this is good. It's like the season doesn't even start till September or November, but this is, and here we are in March, and we're still talking
game time. They'll start talking about football. I'm like, basketball's going on right now. Talk basketball first, and then we can go into all the exciting football stuff.
Yeah. So basically after basketball, so like from the time basketball ends to the time, so basically during baseball season, from the time basketball ends to the time football starts, there's one podcast that I listen to. They call it Mount Rushmore season. It's because there's really not a whole lot of, it's just baseball to talk about. And you can only talk about plus there's so many games with baseball. It's hard to like overreact to stuff. So a lot of times they'll do like Mount Rushmore season. We'll do like Mount Rushmore of snack foods and like stuff like that. So they'll just do like that, like every, and they'll have guests on to do Mount Rushmore and stuff like that, just to be like, and that's whether it's seasons between, because there's not as much multiple things going on at once. So that's the only thing that when it comes to summer, plus you're just like, it's summer. So you're out doing a whole lot more things than staying inside watching, to the next game or NBA.
We'll go into our last bit of sports news here, and that is LeBron James just became part owner of the Boston Red Sox.
Yeah.
Which also includes, so he became part owner of the Fenway Sports Group, which includes Liverpool and also includes other sporting stuff. So they're one of the largest sports entities in the world. And when we were reading the ESPN article, I didn't know this, that he tried to go for the Atlanta Dream and try to become an owner of that, and ended up not happening. Renee Montgomery is now the owner of the Atlanta Dream. She's a former WNBA player. She's won 2 titles in the NBA. She's also from UConn. I think she's won an NCAA title as well. So for the women. But this is some interesting news. LeBron James getting into baseball.
Well, you figured he was going to end up owning an NBA team anyway when it's all said and done. He moved to LA for a reason. He didn't really, yes, he went there to get championships and stuff, but it's kind of weird.
Movies.
He went there to make movies. He went there to get in sports agencies and that whole thing. it was more of a business. LeBron is very good with business,
Mhm.
that we've noticed. Now, does he get crap a lot from other people? Yeah, because I mean, LeBron is the most. He's one of the. He's just on a microscope of any, like, he's like a Tiger Woods, LeBron James, Tom Brady. Like, they're just one of those type of athletes that just
Michael
when
Jordan back in the day.
yeah, Michael Jordan back in the day, which Michael Jordan really, like, he was a huge David Beckham, like, he's just one of those, like, world athletes, and he's been that way since he was 16 years old.
Yeah.
He's just had this, that type of, everyone knows who LeBron James is.
My friend is from Cleveland, and she said I used to watch his high school games.
Right.
Like, and that to me, I was like, that's crazy to be like, I'm gonna go watch a person who I don't know. I'm gonna go to their high school game to go watch it.
Right. And so, I mean, what LeBron does on the court is insane, especially at 35, and what he's still been able to do. Now, he definitely needs help, but everyone needs help. I don't
Yeah,
care. You can't really do it by yourself. Sometimes
he's waiting for that help to be his son.
yeah, right. Um, yeah, the Bronny James Jr. or whatever they call it,
Yeah.
uh, or whatever people were saying, like, oh, he's a Bron Jr. or something like that.
What interests me about this is because in high school he also played football, so like it wouldn't make sense if he like tried to get part ownership into a football NFL team or get ownership into like XFL or any of that stuff or get an ownership into a basketball team. So baseball was just like, I wonder what his how he is with baseball, how big of a fan he is. And I wonder too, like, is this he's doing this for a financial thing where like he's a businessman, he's gonna go and do ventures that's gonna make him money? Is he gonna be kind of like in name only, just gaining money through it and just like, oh, I'll get to go to the games, and it's kind of like a Bill Maher. He was a part owner of the Mets for a few years, and that was pretty much, he was like, I did it to make money and to get free tickets to the Mets games whenever I was in New York.
Right.
Or is this something where he's going to have active participation in? And is this going to, we see him on his sports side where every city he goes to, he's won a championship. He's very much like, I'm going to be the best of the best and I'm going to get the best of the best around me. So I wonder if this is going to translate into players in Boston, and like, are we going to see some cool stuff from the Red Sox? I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because you never thought he'd dive into baseball, but also you got to realize how lucrative baseball is.
Yeah.
When you look at the top revenue teams, Boston's up there. Is like, it goes,
Dodgers, Yankees, and Red Sox, I think, are the
yeah,
top three.
Dodgers, Yankees, and Red Sox, and then as far as like overall just professional teams as overall, I think it goes Dallas, Yankees by like a slim margin, but Dallas is very over them according to Forbes, and I'm pretty sure the Red Sox are in the top five.
Yeah.
And the Steinbrenners are not going to let LeBron in on anything. Like, that's the thing, is the Red Sox is owned by like an umbrella, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like buying into a law firm when you become like senior partner or whatever. It's like you're
That's the
investing in
Fenway Sport Group.
right. So it's not like the Steinbrenners and stuff, which has had the team forever, and it's still a family run organization, kind of crazy, but still is. Whereas the Fenway Group is a little bit different, so he can buy into it. It's kind of like Jay-Z when he was like part owner of the Brooklyn Nets, and I think Nelly even bought into I don't know if it's the Nets or not. But I think he's just dipping his toe in the water, and just seeing what it's like to be on that side, because he's getting to the point where who knows, he's a robot. He could last for another 10 years, averaging 35 and 40 a night, 40 minutes a game.
Getting all those triple doubles.
Getting all those triple doubles. LeBron haters now are just like, well, I think they should do triple doubles now. It'd be 20, 20, and 10. I'm like, then that's not a triple double. You're just being an idiot.
Yeah.
But
what would you even call that then? Like
a quadruple double or something.
Quadruple
like that.
double, yeah, maybe.
Yeah, it's like a triple double squared or something like that.
Yeah, like cubed, a triple double,
yeah, cubed. Right, exactly. So I think he's dipping his toe and see if he can do. Also, maybe they just need a face. When you think of Boston Red Sox owner, unless you're in Boston, is there really a face of it? It's just there. And then Liverpool. I don't know anything about Liverpool. I have to ask Roca about that.
When you think Boston fans too, like a lot of athletes don't like playing in Boston because Boston can be pretty racist, and you can hear that too. Like Roxy spoke about she's like, I love my city and hate my city at the same time, like about Boston Celtics fans spitting on like two Laker girls like that were there, and just kind of like that fan base is very intense
Mm-hmm.
up there in
Not as bad as
Boston.
Philly. Not as bad as Philly. But
Hey,
Philly
at
fans.
least
But the thing is, it's like I love our fans. I mean, they punch me all the time, but I love our fans here at Philly. They boo
yeah.
me more than they boo the other team. So, but yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I think he's just dipping his toe in the water. Obviously, Space Jam 2 is coming out. It's probably going to be the super, super corny, but so was the first one. But I just always use it as like a joke of like, on a scale of 1 to Space Jam, how good was the movie? It's like, Space Jam's really not that good, but it's just like, it's that weird movie that you still kind of enjoy even though you go back. I mean, Michael couldn't act worth a damn. He was
It's
super
the
cardboard.
nostalgia for
Yeah.
if you were at a certain age around the time that movie came out, you like that movie. But if you're not, then like that's a shit movie.
It's a shit movie, and like I can see it just showing to like kids these days, and they're just like, "What the? This movie's terrible." I'm like, "Yeah,
hey,
I know, but it's awesome."
Soundtrack.
Great soundtrack.
But I know we said we were going to go into WandaVision, but we have spoke for 2.5 hours. So I just have a quick question of WandaVision. Did you like it? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, for me too. So that's going to be the end of this. You now have the record. So Sean's probably going to try to come back and make it even longer than last time. But for the longest episode of Soul Talk, thank you, Josh. It's been a lot of fun. It's been great conversation. I didn't even notice the clock until like I looked up and I was like, oh man, we really have been talking that long. Mm-hmm. So where can the people find you?
People can find me at jmabry826 on Twitter, at jmabry826 on Instagram. I post every once a blue moon, but most because I just basically just use Twitter as my source of sports stuff. That's why I'm keeping up with all that. So I might do a quip here, but as you can tell, I'm a very talkative person, so it's very hard to make my statement in 120 characters. So I really don't tweet a whole lot. But when I do, I mostly just tweet funny stuff. Like I said, I just like to make people laugh. I mean, it's just what I do. So it's mainly you can find you. I used to have a podcast called Sportification way back when. You can still find it on iTunes, where I interview people in the sports world, like that work for Adidas, write for newspapers, stuff like that. I haven't done it in a couple of years, ever since I moved. So, but if you still want to go on there and give it a listen, that'd be cool.
There you go. And then you can find me up there at SoulGovan on Twitter, and you know where the rest to find me. So just go check out all those things. And thank you guys for watching this episode of Soul Talk.